Two young people sat on either side of a table, sipping tea in a hall decked out with lavish gold trim all around. Getting right to the point, the guy blurted out that his companion could never replace Titi. This dude, Wilhelm Haunt, was the main character's fiancé and was supposed to join her family. The engagement seemed to go smoothly, but nope, not a chance. The girl didn't really get what Wilhelm was trying to say. If the guy had told his bride-to-be this before the engagement, it would have been way easier to call things off. Wilhelm was certain he could give his bride anything she wanted, so he wasn't going to break it off. But it was important to him that she know his heart belonged to someone else. The princess was floored by this info and couldn't believe he'd stoop so low. Not only was Lord Wilhelm being a jerk, considering he's supposed to be a knight in shining armor, but he was proudly declaring he wanted to be Tatia's lover. She was even more shocked to learn that Wilhelm wouldn't mind if his wife took a lover too, and that Tatia had no clue and was just some unrequited crush. On Wilhelm's part, that was an especially reckless move. Actually, all of this was a game world called Hermen, and the story was unfolding at the academy in a fantasy universe. The goal of the game is to make choices and amp up the interest. It's your typical dating sim with multiple characters and different endings. The catch is, Karina Pioneer, the girl she's inhabiting, is a background character. The game description said she'd be way hotter and richer than Tatia, but that's BS. Custom settings made the main character gorgeous, like a freaking fairy, and everyone loved her. Karina just became a puppet who made TT look even better. It was bearable until the original game ended. Karina just chilled, even though relationships were still the main problem. Daniel, the Duke Malfurian's son, was her first arranged fiancé. They were supposed to marry even before they were born. He was a handsome, kind, well-mannered dude and a top contender for main character status. But when they got older, Daniel couldn't marry her. He picked Tatia as his bride. Tatia was Karina's friend and hoped it wouldn't mess with their friendship. She chose the main guy, and the game ended. Karina figured she'd be out of the picture. But next up, Raymond Carcel, the owner of the Magic Tower, started hitting on her. This hottie was another main character candidate, and Karina thought, if Tatia chose Daniel, maybe I can get with this guy. But nope, Raymond also chose her bestie. After that, she only hung out with the side characters and soon fell for the eldest son of some random viscount. All this time, Karina couldn't get settled in this world, and he was the only one who made her happy. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and yet another of the princess's boyfriends ran off with Tatia. In this world, even high status, good looks, and skills couldn't compete with being the main character. Karina started to think her friend was deliberately seducing her guys, but turns out this dude was from a regular family. Andrew Lovron Gloucester was the current emperor's half-brother and the only missing member of the royal family. Of course, the main character would end up with a royal. Almost immediately after the breakup, Karina heard the news about Tatia and Andrew's wedding. The game ended 3 years ago. Tatia got married, and it seemed like she'd finally be forgotten and everything would be fine. But Karina just stepped in it again. She walked right up to Daniel and confidently dumped a cup of tea on his head. She wasn't going to take this crap anymore and promised he'd pay for every single thing he said. The next day, there was a huge celebration in the kingdom, packed with guests from all walks of life. Karina showed up to the party too, but after that awful talk with the groom, she couldn't even enjoy herself. Felt like another knife in the back. Everyone was gossiping about her and the wedding that wasn't, acting like she was obsessed with guys. She didn't want to be there either, but her dad was out of the country, and Pioneer needed someone to represent them, so she was stuck. Suddenly, a bright, girly voice chirped up behind Karina. It was Tatia, calling her name. She'd heard from Lord Wilhelm that they were married, and made some dumb joke about not stealing her friend's groom. High society, obsessed with everyone else's lives, thought Karina and the Archduke were total opposites, like light and darkness. And unlike Karina, the guy was an angel. Tatiana always pulled this crap, playing innocent and making Karina look like a fool, turning her into the pathetic bridesmaid. Karina told her Wilhelm couldn't care less about her marriage, and being Tatia's lover would be a huge honor for him. Tatia shot back that when she met Wilhelm, they joked about rumors starting about them, and he said he didn't give a damn about gossip. Karina, impressed, suggested maybe she should meet her husband alone too sometime, since they're such good friends. Duchess Gloucester reached out to the girl, about to say she had it all wrong, but Karina yanked her hand away, slapping hers aside. A servant called Pioneer's representative to see the emperor, and not a moment too soon, because the girl was about to blow a gasket. The servants announced Archduke Pioneer to the emperor, then said Princess Karina was here instead. She greeted His Majesty, and when she looked up, she saw him for the first time. This guy's the Iron and Blood Lord who brutally murdered rebels and their families, a tyrant without a shred of humanity. The guy looked way more harmless than she thought. Plus, he was ridiculously hot, and Tatia's first love in the game, totally worth it. Karina stood there speechless for a beat, and after the Emperor asked what she was thinking about, she said she was struck by his incredible looks. She wasn't scared of him at all, even though people who'd heard about him were shaking in their boots. She'd been through stuff like this, so she knew it was way more important to get to know someone yourself than judge them based on rumors. If the rumors are true, Karina's a horny woman obsessed with guys. The Emperor was really enjoying talking to her, and he told her so right to her face. They chatted the whole night over tea, and the dude was seriously digging the conversation. Before leaving, he decided to shoot his shot with Karina, asking if the spot next to her was still open, and if she wanted to be his girl. Karina was floored by the unexpected proposal, and replied that the Emperor could find a babe way better than her. She was planning on heading home right after the audience, but he asked her not to bail, because there was going to be a big announcement before the end of the party. Karina went back to the celebration, and unluckily for her, was spotted by Lord Wilhelm. He was talking to his fiancé like nothing had even happened. She reminded him that he'd wrecked their relationship, so she didn't owe him any explanations about her chat with the Emperor, and definitely wasn't obligated to hang out with her fiancé. Karina publicly announced that she was demanding a divorce after he confessed he wanted to bang Archduchess Gloucester, which got everyone's attention. The guy lost it that his fiancé was trying to humiliate him in public and wound up to slug her with everything he had. Karina squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the hit, and was already plotting how she'd pin everything on her fiancé and wreck the Haunt family. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Andrew showed up, catching the attacking dude's hand. If Wilhelm dared to lay a hand on Karina, she would have cut him off, publicly humiliated him until he couldn't show his face, and ruined his family's reputation. But Andrew just had to butt in. The girl thanked the Archduke, and without drawing out the conversation, quickly made her exit. She downed her wine in quick gulps, brooding over what had happened and the pathetic excuse for a fiancé she had. Karina couldn't figure out where she'd crossed Tatia. She couldn't care less about Wilhelm, but if Karina even looked at another guy, Tatia would be all over him. The princess wondered if there was a man alive who didn't like Tatia when she caught the Emperor's reflection in her glass. Their eyes met, and Karina blushed. He'd asked her to wait, not get drunk, but things clearly hadn't gone according to plan. She thought the Emperor was finally there to make an announcement, but there wasn't one. If he hadn't lied to Karina, she would have left already. His Majesty asked the princess how he could make up for keeping her waiting, and Karina started to refuse. When she spotted Tatia glaring at them, she realized Tatia was jealous because Karina was with her first love and asked the Emperor to hold her close. He knew exactly what was going on, so he didn't refuse. Tatia left, and Karina thanked the Emperor for playing along. She suddenly thought that maybe he wasn't like other men. She thought he was seriously handsome, especially when he smiled. She told him maybe they should give dating a shot, but then caught herself. The Emperor might think she was nuts, turning him down without realizing it, and then asking him out. But he was stoked that the princess changed her mind. If they started something, he could eventually marry her, and then he'd do his best to be the best damn man for her. Karina woke up in her bed, thinking about the night before, and figuring it was all just a dream. Seeing the insane amount of gifts the Emperor sent, she finally realized it actually happened. The Emperor also sent a letter inviting her to the palace, saying he hoped she hadn't changed her mind overnight. Karina freaked. If she said she had, the Emperor might get pissed, and the rumors would start flying again, only way worse this time. And worst of all, Archduchess Tatia would laugh her ass off, since she's supposed to be the main character, not the princess. Karina was snapped out of her head by servants showing off the Emperor's gifts. Florian cloth that Archduchess Gloucester couldn't get her hands on, perfume only the imperial family could buy, and other stuff the princess ended up liking. Lily, Karina's personal maid, was the happiest for the princess. It was obvious His Majesty was really into her. The doors burst open, and Duke Pioneer's father stood there. The guy was back way sooner than expected. He barked at his daughter to get her ass to his study, pronto! The stuff was stamped with the imperial crest, and the Archduke was pissed Karina was taking gifts from the Emperor while still hitched. She told her dad she was divorcing Haunt, which only made the Archduke even more ballistic. He figured she wouldn't make a move like that without a damn good reason. Maybe that Duchess Tatia was back at it, and he cooled down a little, but not for long. Because then she dropped the bomb that Lord Wilhelm was trying to get with the Duchess, and he blew up again, slamming his fist on the table. He admitted he might be partly to blame, and promised Marquis Haunt would shower her with gifts. So if she wanted something as payback, now was the time to speak up. Karina asked for Wilhelm's island. It was a total dump right now, but with the salt from there, the family could start a perfume factory. Before she got transported, she loved this game, saw all the endings, and Wilhelm's was her favorite, hands down. He owned Soban Island, a place no one ever went. And the sea salt there could be used to make any fragrance you could imagine, plus bath products. The heroes launched bath fragrances, their main product called Tatia's Aroma, and Wilhelm finally gained wealth and authority. Of course, his progress has now stalled since Tati chose someone else. Haunt had growth potential, so now they need to cut off all opportunities from the start, because building a successful business on seized lands would be very problematic for Wilhelm. The Pioneer family had plenty of money, so her father easily allowed his daughter to do whatever she wanted, including, he didn't mind if the girl liked the Emperor. Karina showed Lily what her father gave her to cheer her up. It was that blank check, where you could write in any amount. Since the girl had no other friends, she offered the maid to go to the boutique with her to choose clothes for the meeting with the Emperor. Lily was very happy with the offer and agreed to help Karina with the choice. Karina was stressed by the judgmental looks of people, and also, she was afraid to meet her ex, so she didn't go anywhere all this time. But now she didn't care about people. Outside, a man blocked the girl's path. The guy was Karina's second ex-boyfriend, Raymond Carcel. The girl asked him to move out of the way and not interfere. But, as it turned out, Raymond also decided to visit this place. Karina didn't expect that he had a passion for boutiques of women's luxury clothing. Being a devoted fan of Tati, he came for a gift for the girl, and sarcastically stated that clothes from this place were not suitable for Karina. Lily jumped into the convo, pissed that this dude was talking to the princess like that. But Karina convinced her he wasn't even worth their time. The boutique manager, Fieri, greeted the girls. Every fancy store on the street got a message from His Majesty, asking them to find something special for the princess. The Emperor said to check out Karina's past buys from this place and pick a gift based on what she likes. Obviously, she was stoked he cared so much, but figured it was a bit much. She only said that stuff when she was wasted, and here he was looking after her. Karina actually felt kinda bad. Lily, totally hyped, fluttered around Karina, hunting for the perfect outfit. And finally, she locked one down. Lily was going on about how the Emperor was head over heels, but she froze mid-sentence. And it wasn't just Lily. Everything went still. Raymond showed up. He was the only one who just straight up used time magic like that. After only dating Karina for 6 months, Raymond had the nerve to think he knew her better than she knew herself. So she told him he was a pathetic loser chasing after a married woman and giving all the magic tower's cash to Tati. Raymond lost it, and using his magic, he froze Karina in place, then ordered her to beg for forgiveness on her knees. Karina went ballistic. If he'd used even a little more magic, the other mages would have been all over him, and she made damn sure he knew it. Dude pointed out Karina had changed a lot, then just vanished into thin air. Time started moving again, and she headed off to try on some outfits. After lunch, a carriage arrived from the palace to pick up Karina. After the ride, she stepped out and was surprised. It wasn't the Emperor's private palace, because he wanted to meet somewhere meaningful. It was the Winter Palace, where Aster lived when he was a prince. Totally private, so the only woman ever allowed here was the Empress. The Emperor was being way too good to Karina, which was a disaster. She couldn't tell him she messed up when she was drunk. He met her outside, and Karina, totally caught off guard, leaned back against a pillar. The Emperor held out his hand, and she took it. Aster was a little flustered, since this was his first date ever. Aster didn't know what Karina liked, so he loaded the table with sweets. She wasn't a huge fan, but decided to try everything. The Emperor poured his favorite bitter tea, which cut through the sweetness, reminding her of that time with the booze. He knew Karina was worried about her family's reputation and all that, but he hoped she hadn't changed her mind about them. In this world where the main character gets everything, Aster ended up being the biggest loser. Because everyone's darling Tatiana got married, all the imperial power was focused on him. Aster was the emperor, but had zero power. So to keep his title, he decided to crush all the rebellious nobles. That's how the people started calling him the Emperor on the Bloody Throne. He's a huge name all over the kingdom, and marrying Archduke Pioneer's daughter will help protect his image. Even though Karina was drunk and messed up, the Emperor was still nice to her. She didn't even know what she wanted. Aster said he really wanted to be with her. If Karina took his side, Archduke Pioneer could become his ally, and he'd help her get revenge on Tatia. So it was a killer offer. The Emperor knew what was going on between the friends. He thought Karina was too nice for staying friends with the Archduchess, even after what she'd done. But that day, her eyes were full of revenge, and he saw it. She didn't want to cause Aster any trouble, but he swore on his imperial title that he'd always be on her side, spiritually and politically, and wanted her to use his help. So Karina promised she'd do everything she could to become his beloved. Before bed, while talking to Lily, the princess pointed out that she and the Emperor had a lot in common, and her maid totally approved of her choice. Right then, Lily was cleaning the room and found a bracelet Karina had had since she was 10. She looked at the thing and remembered her first real heartbreak. The star of that show was Daniel, who dumped her for Titi. He'd been her fiancé since they were babies, and once gave them matching bracelets, calling it a friendship thing. Even back then, Karina thought Daniel was into Tatia. The original story was still going on, and she hated it. The bracelet in her hand kind of flashed weirdly, but she figured she was seeing things. Lily thought the bracelet was cursed and told the princess to give it to her so she could burn it. Karina decided to keep it just in case and put it on the nightstand. Marquis Haunt was furious with his son. Crumpling up a piece of paper, he stormed off to find him. Despite Wilhelm trying to talk his way out of it, his father knew the Archduchess was his first love. The dude tried again to explain to the old man that it was all a misunderstanding with the bride, and bam! His dad slapped Wilhelm so hard his ears rang. Feuding with the Pioneer family would bring the Haunts a ton of trouble, so the old man ordered Wilhelm to apologize to the girl, and then kicked him out. This guy had been in a weird kind of limbo with Tatia for ages. More than friends, but not quite lovers. Of course, it was unrequited love, and if he let her go, it was over. Period. So, after Tatia got married, Wilhelm tried to forget everything. His parents introduced him to a girl, and Wilhelm married her for the sake of the family and his career. But the wedding happened, and they never even saw each other. Then, after the engagement, Tatia hit him up. They met up after all this time, and she was as gorgeous as ever. Tatia said if Wilhelm got married, they could see each other way more often, since they'd both be married, and no one would suspect a thing. Wilhelm thought Tatia wanted him to be her side piece, but then his relationship with Karina went south, and the girl ghosted Haunt. No matter what, the guy decided he couldn't let this divorce happen, so Karina and Lily were checking out all the different scents. The princess was serious about opening her own business. No more trusting guys or getting married, she was just gonna focus on her hustle. She appreciated the emperor wanting to back her up, but she wasn't ready to rely on him just yet. People were back to gossiping about Karina, saying she was chasing after the emperor, or even dating two guys at once. That's what they figured. Lily told the princess to just ignore them. They were just jealous chicks. Every time, Karina acted like she was clueless and just brushed it off. After thinking for a second, the princess straight up marched over to those girls. She let them know she heard every single word they said, and then laid out the real story so they could spread the right rumors for once. The girls apologized and, totally embarrassed, they scurried off. Karina suggested to her maid they check out the Nivea store. It was getting super popular, and it could actually be a solid spot for the princess's business. Then, Tatia and Daniel came up to her. The Archduchess totally wasn't expecting to see her old friend here of all places. Silence hung in the air as Daniel, flustered, asked the princess to say hello back. Karina told the maid to wait a minute and not let anyone into the room. Lily prepped the tray, just in case Duke Malfurian or Duchess Gloucester started pressuring her. The maid would be ready. Tatia asked her friend if the rumors about her getting to the emperor were true, but Karina just laughed that she'd ask about Aster. The princess said Titi only felt weird, because she couldn't steal her man. The Archduchess tried to defend herself, saying she was just worried about Karina misunderstanding her and Wilhelm, but the girl wasn't buying it. She believed if a married woman showed up with another man, everyone would think she was a slut. Karina noticed Daniel Malfurian, because he and Tatia had been friends since childhood. The guy still hung around her like a puppy even after she got married. The first person who betrayed the princess and left a scar on her heart. The girl asked Tatia to stay out of her and Aster's relationship and apologized for using his name, explaining that she called him that in private and it was a habit, even though it wasn't true. Well, since they were having this conversation, Karina decided to speak her mind. She didn't consider these people her friends, since they didn't do anything when those nasty rumors about her were going around. Even though Karina was super pissed, Tatia figured they were still friends and tried to patch things up. The word friends set the princess off, and she shoved Tatia's hand away so hard, she accidentally broke her bracelet. The Archduchess totally freaked and started scrambling to pick up all the beads off the floor. Daniel promised he'd buy her a new bracelet, but she wasn't having it. Tatia only wanted that one. Saying it was all too much, Tatia stormed out of the room, completely losing it. As Daniel chased after her, Lily came in with a tray, practically burning with rage. The maid had been eavesdropping and was about to smash the plates over their heads. This whole thing was a total disgrace. Karina was just glad she didn't end up marrying Daniel. Then a weird noise caught her ear. She spotted a bead on the floor that had fallen from Tatia's broken bracelet and picked it up. The second Karina held it, a lycometer popped over Daniel's head, showing 64% and rising, just like in the original game. Tatia instantly went over and grabbed Karina by the arm. Lily was still holding the tray, ready to serve, but Karina told her to leave them and not let anyone in. Titi tried to snatch the bead from the princess's hand, but she just taunted her, pulling her hand away. Now it was Karina's turn to take the girl's stuff. She wasn't actually going to take anything, so she ended up giving the thing back. She didn't need what wasn't hers, unlike Titi. The Archduchess was worried her friend had seen everything and asked her about it. The princess pretended not to know what Titi was talking about, but then she laid her cards on the table. She was curious how the girl was seducing her exes with the bracelet. Every single one of her engagements fell apart because of Titi, and for her, it was just a game. She'd been so low down all this time, and now she dares to be jealous of Aster. But on top of that, the Archduchess also declared that the Emperor was special, and so were her feelings for him. In the doorway, Karina spotted Daniel. He looked like he was eavesdropping, which was the perfect opportunity to stir things up. The princess told Titi that all her men would eventually marry, become other women's husbands, and forget about her. But the girl didn't think so. She raised her voice, saying that all those guys were hers from the start, and she wouldn't let anyone take them. Of course, Daniel heard everything. Heartbroken by his beloved's words, all he could manage was her name and nothing else. A tear rolled down the guy's cheek, and without waiting for Titi, he stormed out of the room. Looks like she's heading home alone today. Karina assured the Archduchess that everyone would eventually see her true colors. But even after taking a loss today, she still insisted she was special, unlike the princess. Pioneer told her to flash that smile she always does, cause her happiness ain't gonna last. The rivals are about to clash at the festival. Karina wasn't just pissed at Tatia and the guys who betrayed her. She was also starting to wonder if she was the problem. She imagined knocking TT out, seeing as she wasn't the only one with a bracelet like that. The thing looked ordinary enough. There was a chance Karina's bracelet didn't actually have any powers at all. Maybe the only point of this game is to boost affection levels. But despite all her efforts, she couldn't manage to seduce Aster. She scribbled something with a quill on a piece of paper, thinking about how TT would soon be in her shoes. Karina felt a little trashy in her outfit, but Lily reassured her. It was perfect for teaching that awful dame a lesson. There's no empress in this country, and the Archduke pair always dances the first slow dance, so Tatia usually gets all the attention. Karina always dodged these kinds of events, cause she didn't want to see her. But things were different now. That bracelet on her wrist looked kinda childish, but it was a shot at figuring out if it had any juice. At the festival, Aster was bored out of his skull with the high society types, lost in thoughts about the princess and waiting for her to show. Duke Malfurian greeted the Emperor, looking a little bummed out, and Aster figured a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve shouldn't be in politics. The guy asked the Duke what his deal was with Karina, and he said they'd been best buds since they were kids. But then, remembering she was dating the Emperor, he clarified that they were still just friends, nothing more. Watching Daniel cling to the Archduchess under the Just Friends banner, Aster wondered what that word even meant to the guy. Daniel was thinking Karina must have been having a rough time, and he hadn't been looking out for her at all. The Emperor told him to be more careful in the future, since he wasn't as nice as the princess. Suddenly, a bright, girly voice cut through the air next to the guys. Figures, it was Tatia, always popping up around the dudes. While she was chatting it up with the Emperor, Daniel noticed she'd fixed the bracelet and looked super fake. What went down that day was still a total mystery to the Duke. Ever since that went down, Titi made him want to puke every time he saw her. So, she tells Aster it's her birthday, like totally out of the blue, and waits for him to say something. He does, but he also points out her husband's clearly not giving her enough attention, giving the Emperor puppy dog eyes. Tatia asks to steal his first dance as her birthday present. Before Aster could even open his mouth, Andrew Gloucester shows up and basically tells his wife to knock it off. The Archduke apologizes to the Emperor for his wife's awkwardness, but honestly, he had nothing to apologize for. Aster then tells Titi, straight up, to leave him out of her messed up marriage. Karina heard some noise, and it was Wilhelm booking it towards her, desperate to talk. But the butler blocked him. Duke Andrew had told him to toss Lord Wilhelm out on his ear if he ever showed his face. This guy clearly had some anger issues. He clenched his fist, ready to punch the butler. Karina, worried about the butler, and knowing they'd have to talk eventually anyway, told the guy to back off. She decided to check the bracelet, and no surprise, his affection level was tanking. Karina thought they were done after the banquet, so she had no clue what this dude was still trying to pull. Wilhelm's affection score on the screen kept tanking. She reminded him how he'd lost it, and almost got violent. Barely holding back his anger, the Lord apologized and admitted he messed up. Since he seemed genuinely sorry, Karina accepted his apology, but still told him to bug off. He couldn't lose her, so Wilhelm grabbed her hand, begging her to stop the divorce. After all, it'd be her fourth, and who'd marry her after that? Karina wasn't buying it. She wouldn't even let him walk her out, knowing he was only doing this because Tatia found out about the divorce. She was done with him. Wilhelm spotted a bracelet on Karina's wrist, just like the one Tatia wore. He figured she was trying to be like her, hoping his feelings would change. This guy was way out of line. The butler threatened to call the guards if he kept insulting the princess. Wilhelm's affection started climbing again. Looks like he actually believed Karina was copying Tatia to get to him. Karina was thinking about taking the bracelet to the banquet to see the emperor's affection level. With that, she could say anything to pump up his score. The princess's bracelet had power too, but she decided against wearing it, asking Lily to put it in her room instead. Walking into the hall, Karina felt a weird vibe. Daniel looked bummed, and Tatia and Andrew looked like they'd just had a fight. As always, only the emperor was beaming, greeting her like he genuinely meant it. That's what it's like to have someone truly happy to see you. The princess asked Aster why he was so cheerful, and leaning in close, he whispered something in her ear. The emperor welcomed everyone to the festival, saying he hoped they could forget about work for the day and relax. Karina couldn't stop thinking about Tatia. Maybe she was from the real world too, but if she knew the original story, she wouldn't be so hung up on Aster, who's really nothing special. Come to think of it, Karina had always just seen Tatia as the game's main character, never actually trying to get to know her. Karina's thoughts were interrupted by the emperor. He asked her to dance the opening dance with him. They paired up, becoming practically one. Aster asked what she was thinking about, and after hearing her answer, told her to focus on him. He was super jealous, and just wanted her to enjoy their dance. Then the pair spun into each other's arms. Tatia watched them from the sidelines. All she could do was nervously chew on her fingers. The guests were gossiping about the princess again, but this time about how picture-perfect she and Andrew looked together. For once, she was actually happy people were whispering about her, so much so she could have cried. Archduke Pioneer told his daughter he'd be at his usual spot and asked her to stop by, but he was nowhere to be found. After hearing from the emperor that Karina's mom, the mistress of the magic tower, was at the banquet, she got seriously freaked out and rushed to find her before disaster struck. She found her mom in the hall, grabbing Tatia by the hair, yelling that she stole her daughter's fiancé. Andrew tried to break it up, but he got hit with the mage's wrath too. The woman screamed that he was pathetic since his wife was always hanging around other dudes. When she saw Karina, her face instantly changed. The angry glare turned into a joyful smile, and she let go of the Archduchess's hair. Karina grabbed her hand and pulled her away to avoid making the situation worse. Her mom told the princess she'd be staying at the palace tonight with her dad. The Archduke tried so hard to escape, but he'll still have to face her at home. The emperor joined the girls, greeting the mistress of the magic tower. She started checking him out right away. Face was all right, and he had a decent build. Maybe the emperor wasn't so bad after all. He knew her mom was worried about Karina, but he reassured her she had nothing to worry about. He was a good guy, and he really liked the princess. The mage wished her daughter a good date and blew a kiss. Karina was super embarrassed. Her mom was one of a kind. Aster found the girl's mom fascinating. He thought the princess looked like the Archduke, but she was even more like her mother. Finally, they were alone. The emperor had been waiting for this moment all day. In the lounge, Tatia was bawling like always. Her husband stood next to her, and Daniel was sitting on the sofa across from them. She was furious that her friend didn't help her when she asked the emperor to dance with her. Titi said he didn't care about her or her misery. The Archduke asked Daniel to leave, and he left without hesitation. But he was thinking that Tatia was acting completely insane. Once they were alone, she asked if Andrew was mad at her, but he didn't care that she wanted to dance with someone else. That's when Titi noticed something was off with the bracelet. She'd been seeing the affection levels all blurry lately. The Archduke told his wife to remember two things. If she broke her promise, she'd lose everything. And if she wanted to live, she needed to be responsible for her words. Andrew finished his speech and slipped out of the room without a sound. Tatia was relieved Karina thought the bracelet just showed the affection window. If she'd touched anything else, the girl would be screwed. But even though the Archduchess reset the accessory, it wasn't working like before. Out of nowhere, Ray appeared in front of her, and she fell right into his arms. When he asked if someone had hurt her, Tatia said no, but Raymond didn't buy it. Her eyes were red as a rabbit's. Truth was, something was bothering the Archduchess. She asked him to do something for her, something involving Karina. Finally, the Emperor and the Princess approached the Winter Garden's doors. It was even more stunning inside than out. It was cool in the garden, and Aster draped his cloak over Karina's shoulders. The Empress was a winter mage, and her dad built this garden so she could enjoy beautiful flowers even in the cold. Karina thought the Emperor was a real romantic. Because Aster was born a summer mage, and his energy was different from his mom's, hers weakened a lot. Then there was the poisoning incident. The poison shouldn't have affected her at all, but it was a huge blow to her weakened state. She gave birth to her son and died less than a year later. Every time they met, his dad would rage at the kid, saying his mom died because of him. And Karina already knew what happened next. Because of his father's neglect, Astor's position as emperor became super weak. So to boost his power, he had to kill all his brothers and anyone standing in his way. The girl was pissed at how unfair it was. A 1-year-old couldn't do something like that. The guy who poisoned her was to blame, so the emperor shouldn't have blamed the kid. Astor was really touched that she was on his side. She took his hand, noticing how cold it was, and the emperor said that people with cold hands have the warmest hearts. Suddenly, it hit her that sincerity is awesome, because cool people can spot it. Their faces were way too close, like this was the moment. But someone started loudly calling for Karina. Looks like Duke Malfurian was searching hard for her. Even though the emperor was jealous, he trusted her and let her go. Meeting up with Daniel, Karina asked why he was looking for her, considering he only ever needed Titi. The emperor figured this convo wasn't for him, and stepped back, giving the former friends a chance to talk face to face. Daniel blurted out that Tatia was acting weird. Karina was obviously bummed. He only came to her for that, and shot back that she'd always been weird. But their whole relationship was messed up, with the Duke chasing after a married woman and calling her by name. They were supposed to be friends, but he always took Tatia's side. Now that Daniel thought about it, he apologized and admitted he'd been totally clueless. This time, the princess was genuinely surprised and accepted her friend's apology. Daniel felt like he'd broken free from a spell. Ever since Karina and Titi had their falling out, he'd felt like something was cracking inside him. He used to think Tatia was this fragile girl he had to protect at all costs. But after that day, she seemed so fake that even thinking about her made him want to puke. Karina definitely wasn't expecting Daniel to trash Tatia like that. He insisted she wasn't the same girl he knew. She'd recently yelled at him for not helping her convince the emperor to dance with her, right in front of the Archduke, her husband. Wanting to dig a little deeper, Karina asked Daniel if the bracelet vendor was a mage. He couldn't quite remember, so he suggested she ask her mom. Karina said goodbye, giving him a friendly heads up to rethink his feelings for Tatia if he wanted to avoid a ton of trouble. After finding out from the butler that her mom was in her room, not the parlor, Karina headed that way, wondering if her parents still had feelings for each other. They got divorced after her split with Daniel, not just because their feelings cooled off, but because she chose magic and he chose family. They were so caught up in their own stuff, they forgot about each other, and Karina and Daniel splitting up was the last straw. The girl knocked on her mom's door, and after a few minutes, saw her mom standing there, all out of breath. The princess asked her to tell her something about the bracelet, and her mom asked where she got it. Karina got seriously freaked out and asked if the jewelry had dangerous magic, but a quick look wasn't enough to tell, so her mom invited the princess into the room. Mrs. Pioneer poured her daughter some tea and asked her to hang on a second. Karina hadn't been in her mom's room in ages. It used to always be locked, but nothing had changed in here. Her dad was clearly taking care of it. Her mom guessed that Daniel had given her the bracelet, and she squeezed it hard in her hand. Bracelets are a great base for a magical artifact, and this one has top-tier seasonal magic stones mixed in. Regular magic stones just store magic, but seasonal ones give it away. They're a real bitch to get your hands on, and not much is known about them. Whoever made this bracelet is either a genius or completely nuts. Mom put the jewelry in a box so she could take it to the tower and really study it. Soon after, she asked her daughter how she and the emperor started dating. The girl, without going into detail, said it was a long story that unfolded unexpectedly. The woman pointed out that her daughter had always been a cautious girl and told her to follow her heart. Just once, she could let loose a little. Changing the subject to men, Mom couldn't help but mention Wilhelm. Karina said she'd filed for divorce and it should all be finalized, but the guy was acting weird and they still hadn't responded to the filing. Something noisy caught the girl's attention. Flustered, Mom said it was just a cockroach she couldn't catch. At the table, Karina spotted some blue antennae and swung her mug with all her might to kill the bug. Turns out, Dad had been hiding under the table the whole time, and the blue antennae were strands of his hair. When his daughter screamed, the guy almost burst out laughing. He was hidden pretty well, but when he heard Wilhelm's name, he couldn't contain himself. Karina still couldn't figure out what he was doing in her mother's room. There was nothing to worry about now. Her parents were taking over Karina's mess with her fiancé and promised to sort everything out. The Marquis Hauntas tried to greet Karina's parents with all the friendliness they could muster, not letting on that anything was amiss. The Pioneer family had filed for divorce with the Hauntams ages ago and were still waiting for a response. Wilhelm's dad immediately claimed it was a misunderstanding, and his son apologized to the princess. Wilhelm himself was called into the room to explain himself. He greeted the guests and braced himself for the interrogation. His father was trying to convince the pioneers that his son was genuinely sorry to his bride-to-be. That day, the servants blocked his path, and the princess clearly didn't want to talk, so the guy lost it a little. But that's true love, right? Acting without hesitation for your love, for Tatia, to be with her. That's what Wilhelm thought. He said he apologized, but the princess said she wanted a divorce. The guy admitted he messed up and regretted it. As for the talk about wanting to be the Archduchess's lover, the guy claimed it was a misunderstanding, and he never said that. Madame Pioneer wasn't just some lady with a fancy magic tower title, so she took it upon herself to go to their estate to find out the truth. Magic could recreate the memories of that day, and she'd know who was telling the truth and who wasn't. Using teleportation, the woman whisked everyone away to their palace. Then Karina asked if Wilhelm was ready to swear on his rank and knightly honor. Hanta's parents were super worried, but they reassured themselves that their son wouldn't lie. The guy agreed, and Mrs. Pioneer started diving into the memory. She warned everyone that they might get a little dizzy. Everyone there saw what went down the day that dude was supposed to apologize to his fiancé, and Wilhelm's lies totally blew up in his face. The guy dug in his heels, saying he didn't remember any of it. Karina's mom was furious because her magic never lies, no matter what. The butler stepped up for the pioneer family he served, because everything the onlookers were seeing, the servants had just witnessed firsthand. Wilhelm, who swore on his knight's title and honor, probably wasn't too happy watching himself get exposed like that. Now, no one had any doubts about who was to blame for the breakup. Thanks to Willie's actions, the girl got a ton of Sabon, and now she was just looking for a good perfumer. Her mom sent Karina here, but this creepy place didn't look anything like a perfume boutique. A woman greeted the princess at the door. She wasn't sure if the girl would find what she was looking for, but she was ready to show her some sense. Despite the limited selection, the girl still picked out a bottle and asked to sample that particular fragrance. At first, it was a bit harsh, but just a few moments later, Karina found herself in a field covered in morning dew. The grass gently swayed at her feet, and a delicate floral scent enveloped her. After confirming that the woman named Nevia owned the perfume shop, the girl proposed a partnership, but the woman's reaction was totally out of left field. She yelled that she wouldn't work with the girl, because the Archduchess must have sent her too. Karina was pissed by that statement. She brought up the rumor everyone knows, about how Tatia swiped 4 fiancés from one girl. And since the princess is that girl, it'd be weird if she was Tatia's errand runner. Nevia felt bad for jumping to conclusions, and decided the Frey family might be trustworthy after all. But Karina was dying to know why the woman reacted like that in the first place. Neva explained that the Archduchess came to her once and offered to collaborate, said she wanted to launch her own perfume brand and leave all the management to her partner. But in the contract, the woman found a shady clause, a part that said all the recipes she created would immediately become the Archduchess's property. Nevia left her boutique to her daughter, who followed in her footsteps and also became a perfumer. But when she raised the issue of ownership rights and succession of leadership, Tatia suddenly blew up. The Archduchess got furious about the woman's disobedience and even threatened to ruin her. Soon after that, Nevia lost her customers, and people on the street didn't even want to talk to her anymore, like she'd committed some crime. Neva was so burnt out, no matter how hard the perfumer tried, it was all for nothing, so she was planning to get out of there. Karina knew this situation all too well. She never crossed Tatia, but that girl had a ton of nasty rumors swirling around her. Then, Aster showed up in her life like a savior. The dude totally believed everything she said, and was the first to offer to help her get revenge. Now it was Karina's turn to lend a helping hand. The princess decided to give the woman a shot, and asked to let her help. Together, they could rebuild the business and make it thrive. Nivea doubted the princess's abilities, since Tatia was an archduchess, and had some serious pull. Karina decided to show her that she wasn't scared of Tatia. She told her she was dating the emperor, and might become empress soon, which would give her way more clout than Tatia. She didn't rush Nevea into making a decision. She said if the perfumer ever made up her mind, she could come to Duke Pionier's mansion. When Tatia took everything from Karina, leaving her with nothing, she wished someone would say stuff like that to her. During tea, the girl and her mom were trash-talking Tatia. After everything, she still had the nerve to act all high and mighty. Freya gave her daughter back her bracelet. Even in the magic tower, they couldn't figure out where it came from. It was the perfect magic storage device. Mrs. Pioneer put her magic into that charm, and told her to do as she'd always taught her. Then Karina would always be safe. The woman said Tatia would definitely try to hurt her daughter, but she couldn't always protect her, so the girl should be careful, and Karina hugged her mom with all her love. A few days after her mom left, the princess was getting ready for a picnic with the emperor, and her outfit was gorgeous. So mature, elegant, but still incredibly cute. Lily was super happy that things were working out for Karina. She was always there as support and a rock, experiencing everything right alongside the girl. After knocking on the princess's door, a servant announced that someone named Lela was looking for her, and it was urgent. Lela was Nevaeh's daughter. The girl said that a fire suddenly broke out in the store, and her mom told her to tell the princess about it and went back herself. But they still can't put out the fire. A book with fragrance recipes was left behind, and the woman went back for it. The fire just won't go out, and water isn't helping. If they can't put out the fire with water, then it's not ordinary, but most likely magical, and then they need some serious help. Karina sent Lily to the Mages Association to have them send capable people to the scene of the fire, and she herself, together with Lela, immediately got ready to go to the burning boutique. Time was running out, and the princess hopped on her horse, telling the girl to catch up in a carriage. Karina promised she'd save Nivea and took off. She got to the fire and just froze. The flames were still raging, and nobody was getting it under control. Just like she figured, the fire was magic-based, which meant only magic could put it out. Lily would take ages to get any mages here, and a little longer, Nivea would be toast. Karina snatched a bucket of water from a servant and doused herself completely, head to toe. She announced this fire was magic, so everyone needed to wait for the mages, while she, the daughter of Archmage Freya, would handle saving the boutique owner. Mom used to teach Karina magic. One of the lessons was shaping it into whatever you wanted. Freya thought her daughter was doing pretty well, considering she wasn't a mage, and was doing all this so the princess could defend herself against magical attacks. Her mom's bracelet gave her strength and confidence. All she needed to do was picture the right shape. Karina created a water-based shield around herself. The flames couldn't hurt her now. Once she was done, she immediately ran off to save Nevaeh. The woman was sitting on the floor amid the fire, clutching a cookbook. She'd hurt her leg and couldn't walk, so she asked Karina to give the cookbook to Lel and tell her that Mom loves her very much. The room was full of smoke, and the woman passed out. The princess couldn't just leave her. She was getting out of here with Nivea and no one else. Focusing her power, Karina created a stronger shield. A big dome filled with clean air. After breathing in some oxygen, Nevaeh woke up and got her bearings. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Raymond appeared. He'd probably been watching the whole tragedy unfold. Since Tatia didn't have magic, Karina figured the guy started the fire himself. But Raymond claimed he came to rescue the woman. The princess used the bracelet, hoping it would somehow help. But the jewelry only showed the level of affection. Raymond wasn't a hero, and the only person he ever did anything for, without expecting something in return, was Titi. So he offered Karina a deal. She gives him the cookbook, and he gets them both out of there. Karina was just pissed off by his words, and she told him she didn't need his help. Raymond grabbed the princess's hand, letting her know magic wasn't a simple escape route for her. Another bracelet ability popped up, a choice window. But she was so freaked she didn't pick anything, so it auto-selected. Karina stayed silent, and the guy's affection level ticked up a notch. He was still standing his ground, waiting for her to hand over the book. The girl said she had no choice, and Raymond figured she'd finally come to her senses and would cooperate. But Karina just told her ex to go to hell. Barely conscious, the girl was still fighting back. She just couldn't do it any other way. Since the princess wouldn't give him the book, he decided he'd just take it himself. Suddenly, someone appeared behind Raymond, and sensing the newcomer, the dude tensed up. He barely turned to check out the stranger before getting knocked out cold. Karina managed to crack open her eyes to see what was happening. Looks like the Emperor showed up to save her. The princess woke up in her bed, throat drier than the Sahara. She asked Lily for a glass of water. Turns out, her parents were already in the room, freaking out. Freya was even holding up fingers, making her count them. They were seriously scared stiff, and overjoyed Karina was back. The whole family just hugged it out. Mom chewed her out, said she was reckless, and slept for 5 days straight. But Nevaeh filled her in, and Mom thanked Karina for saving her friend. She asked how Nevaeh was doing. Turns out she was fine, recovering in the hospital, and even woke up before Karina did. The princess told them she and the perfumer saw Raymond at the fire, and he might be behind it. But Freya shut that down quick. He was logged in at the magic tower. They'd know instantly if he cast a fire spell. Whoever did this was damn careful. They blocked the magic, making it impossible to recover any memories. Dad also looked into it. Luckily, Nevaeh had insurance, so rebuilding the place shouldn't be a problem. Karina needed to focus on getting better. There was a pile of letters on the table, all from the Emperor, while she was out. Aster said he'd send one every day until she wrote back. A couple days passed. Karina was almost back to normal, and she and the Emperor were trading letters daily, even though he was swamped with defense budget stuff. The girl was reading another letter when the butler came in with news. Mrs. Nevea had arrived at the palace for a visit. The woman was grateful to Karina for saving her life, but she decided to turn down the offer of collaboration anyway. She'd inhaled too much smoke that day and lost her sense of smell. The hospital said her chances of recovery were slim, and she couldn't call herself a perfumer anymore. Karina thought Nivea had been through too much to give up so easily. Despite the hardships, she risked her life for that recipe book, and her years of experience hadn't vanished. The girl urged the perfumer to fight until the very end. The woman was touched that the princess cared so much and agreed to go along with her, but on one condition. Nivea wanted Lela to be the head perfumer. Despite her youth, she wasn't just talented, she was a genius. Karina agreed and moved on to discussing details. Her family was throwing their annual masquerade ball this summer, a tradition since the first duke. Even before it starts, the ball is the hottest topic, so it was the perfect opportunity to showcase their brand, especially since the aristocracy are obsessed with personal care. The only snag was that the masquerade ball was only a week away, so the schedule would be tight. But Nivea wasn't scared at all. Karina told Lily to get the carriage ready, even though she still wasn't fully recovered. To catch a tiger, you gotta go into its den, and that's exactly what she was gonna do. Declare war on the tiger. On the way, the princess was thinking about how unfair this world is. It only existed for Tatia and revolved entirely around her. That's what she'd thought up until now. And yet, she almost died recently. She and Nivea weren't just puppets who existed solely for Tatia. At Archduke Gloucester's palace, Karina was drinking tea, waiting for the Archduchess to show. Tatia wasn't expecting her friend. Of course, she'd heard the terrible news and said she was worried about her. Karina told her that the shop owner had lost her sense of smell, and that was really bothering her. TT didn't get why the princess was telling her this. Despite the Archduchess's excuses, she knew damn well who was behind the fire. So she came to the palace to remind her former friend that she'd ruined someone's life. Karina was about to leave when Tatia screamed that she had nothing to do with it. She claimed it was all the princess's fault, because she was trying to take what TT couldn't have. That bitch! The Archduchess snapped, shoving her friend. She accused Karina of being jealous and sticking her nose in everything she wanted. Tati said whatever the princess got her hands on was worthless garbage she wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. The Archduchess started saying Aster was just like all the other guys, and Karina slapped her across the face. Hard. Tati was stunned, but even angrier, she swung at the princess, but the girl easily caught her hand. Karina's earrings were enchanted artifacts, and they recorded every single word her rival said. Titi said that was messed up. But in this situation, she was the last person who could talk about playing dirty. The princess made it clear the world wasn't going to be nice to her anymore, and walked off. When Karina got to the servants, she told them what the fight was about, completely humiliating Tati. TT was about to go off on the princess, but remembering the recording, she shut her mouth. The princess was determined to make her former friend pay for ruining her life, and Nivea's life, for a long time. Outside, the Archduke stopped her. He probably wanted to chat, but Karina wasn't in the mood to talk to her ex. Andrew grabbed her hand, and she immediately told him to let go. Those Gloucesters were two of a kind, still flirting even after getting hitched. The Archduke asked Karina for a few minutes of her time, but she told him to send a formal request to the Duke's estate and hurried off. A single look from him used to bring tears to my eyes. But time really does heal all wounds. The maid offered the Archduchess some tea, but Tatia asked to be left alone. Hearing the whispers, she went to the door to figure out what was going on, and realized the servants were gossiping about her. Tatia had a bad habit. Every time the Archduchess got nervous, she'd bite her nails and the skin around them. When she was 19, things were completely different. Even back then, she used her bracelet to boost how much guys liked her. Everyone admired Titi's caring nature and kindness, while they saw Lady Karina as an ice queen. In the academy courtyard, Tatia spotted her friend with some guy and called out to say hi. So, this weekend, she and Daniel were hitting up a cafe, and the soon-to-be Archduchess invited the girl to hang out with them. Karina bailed, saying she had a date. And the second she was gone, the other students started gossiping about how she's dating a loser, so he won't dump her. And Tatia, like always, was playing the concerned friend act, same as usual. Over in the garden, Andrew was totally engrossed in his book when someone poked him on the cheek. He thought it was Karina, but he was super surprised to see her friend standing there instead. The girl asked to check out his book, and after guessing right, she suggested that Andrew become friends. Finally, Karina could chill and enjoy some spa treatments. Lily whipped up her own cream and gave an amazing massage. The princess felt like she was in heaven and thought the girl should start her own massage business. At last, the princess was ready. Thanks to Lily, she looked and felt fantastic. His Majesty was already waiting for her in the residence courtyard. Karina asked Aster if he was tired or if she was bothering him, but the emperor just said he really loved his job. They were both super happy to see each other, so they decided to take a walk. The emperor asked her when she learned magic, and Karina got flustered, saying her powers weren't that strong, and if it wasn't for him, she and Nevaeh might be dead already. The dude insisted he only showed up after it was all over. She probably mistook someone else for Aster. She knew she was wrong, but back then, those eyes looked exactly like the emperor's. Anyway, the guy thought Karina was amazing even without magic. Barely knows how, and she's already saved someone, diving headfirst into a raging fire. She worried she'd acted recklessly and could have hurt others, but Aster promised he'd always be on her side, in love and politics, and told her not to doubt herself. Archduke Andrew was on his way to meet the emperor, not understanding why he'd been summoned, since nothing had happened. He told the guest to come in and sit down. Guess he wasn't gonna get chewed out after all. The guy decided to get straight to the point and said he had to thank the Archduke. He found out that Andrew had been on Vera Street a couple weeks back. There was a problem at the guy's boutique, and he needed to be there in person. The emperor went on, saying a fire broke out at one of the boutiques that day. Andrew got nervous, because he was sure no one saw him there. The guy said Karina thought he'd saved her, but the emperor wasn't even there. The Archduke confessed he just happened to be passing by and was able to help. The emperor's face changed, but he said everything was fine, that Andrew deserved a reward, and handed him some valuable seasonal gems. The guys said their goodbyes, and the Archduke headed toward the exit. It felt like a wild animal was burning a hole through his back with its gaze. Still, the emperor decided to ask the guy one more question. He already knew Gloucester's wife really hated Karina, and suspected they were behind it. Aster was pressuring Gloucester with magic, and he started making excuses, saying Raymond, who'd shown up in the capital, was probably to blame. But he just made things worse. Now, knowing Andrew had been visiting Raymond, the emperor didn't understand how he dared claim he just happened to save Karina. Andrew always acted like he knew nothing, and always wanted to take what belonged to Aster. Even as a kid, the Duke was loved more by their father than Aster was. The man was ready to give the boy everything. Even if Aster already had it, he'd hunt down something even better for his younger son. Aster had to keep telling himself it would all be okay, and he'd still become emperor. A few years later, the old emperor kicked the bucket, and a brutal fight for the throne broke out. After offing the second prince, the main troublemaker, Aster went straight to Andrew. The dude ran, which saved his life. If anyone tried to grab the throne, Aster would immediately suspect his half-brother. He just got incredibly lucky again, because of his rep. The emperor couldn't just kill a duke, so he pretended to buy his story. Stepping out of Aster's office, the guy wiped off his nervous smile and totally freaked out. Back at his mansion, Gloucester anxiously asked his maid where his wife was. Of course, the woman could see something was up. The couple acted like they were ready to murder each other, and he even flashed a dagger on their wedding night. Finally finding Tatia, the Duke demanded she hand over the bracelet. He wanted to know where the magic he'd put into it on their first night had gone. Straining, the girl said she didn't even know if there was magic in the bracelet at all. Andrew knew his wife was lying to him, and pissed off, he shoved her aside. The guy yelled that she didn't have an ounce of conscience left, and she'd ruined his life. Tatia didn't understand what she'd done wrong, but apologized to her husband, bursting into tears. The Duke knew that Raymond had secretly used his magic and started the fire. He reminded the girl not to forget that their marriage only held together because of her promise to make him emperor, so she should stop messing around. That night, the girl headed to someone's house, located deep in the woods. Ray met her at the doorstep. The guy was covered in bruises and scratches, but he was ready to endure anything for Titi. He guessed the girl wanted to ask him for something. Otherwise, why would she come in such darkness? Tatia always twisted a strand of hair around her finger when she wanted to ask Raymond for something difficult. This time, Ray suffered because of the girl, so she felt awkward asking him for anything. But as soon as the guy said he was ready for anything for her, Titi asked him to kill Karina. In the business district on Workshop Street, the princess and Lily were already rushing to the perfumers. The mother and daughter were happy to see them. They apologized for the mess and told the girls to come on in. Business was booming, but Nivea and Lela hadn't slept in 3 days, buried in research. Lily, being a maid who loves cleanliness, immediately started tidying up, while the princess asked the girls to show her the new scents. Finally, everyone sat down at the round table, and Lela began her presentation. The new fragrance was created for the strong women of this world. Spicy top notes make a powerful impression. The middle notes are soft and glamorous, and the base notes are subtle and long-lasting. The perfumer did way better than the princess expected, and now it was time to ask some questions. She wanted to know if noble ladies would like a product so different from the others, and Lela replied that the fragrance was long-lasting, with sharp, bright top notes, familiar to girls, but with its own special charm. Like the princess, Lily thought the perfumer was an absolute genius. She not only created good fragrances, but also knew a lot about perfume seasons. Of course, Karina was stunned when she learned that Lella wanted to name the fragrance after her, feeling that she wasn't worthy of being the muse for such a scent. The perfumer made it clear to the girl that she knew how to wait for the right moment and acted without hesitation when necessary. She was brave and always ready to help, so the fragrance conveyed the image of the lady who fought the flames that day, saving Nivea's life. The sun was already beginning to set below the horizon, and the perfumer said goodbye to the girls, wishing them a safe journey. Karina was glad that she was able to help Nivea and Lella, preventing Tatia from ruining such a talent. In the past, she wouldn't have even thought of involving anyone in her revenge, but teamwork turned out to be surprisingly effective. For the first time, Karina was looking forward to the ball as much as Lily was. At the palace, the emperor received good news. His approval rating among the residents had increased by 20% compared to last year. This was due to the policy of friendliness towards the people, and the friendly relations with the Pioneer family also had an influence. Upon learning that the Pioneer princess had arrived at the palace, the emperor ended the report and dismissed the advisors. When they met, he apologized for always inviting her to boring workplaces, but the girl actually liked it. This way, she felt closer to Aster. Today, Karina came to give the guy an invitation to the family ball. She didn't want him to feel obligated, so she was ready to accept a rejection if the emperor was busy. Despite a large amount of work, Aster promised to make time and come. Still, it was about their relationship, and he couldn't say no to his girl. Karina's outfit for the ball looked amazing, but she worried it might be too revealing. Her parents were stunned seeing her. Like parents do, they worried it was too much, especially since Karina said she didn't like clothes like that. At her 10th birthday, Tatia dressed fancier than the birthday girl, and Karina was super upset that day. Back then, she kept a low profile so she wouldn't mess with the original. But that's enough. Tonight, she was gonna shine. The ball started. Everyone was having a blast, enjoying the vibe and hanging out. Suddenly, the lights went out, and the guests freaked out, big time. In the spotlight, Princess Karina appeared to welcome everyone to their family's ball. Before the party really kicked off, she decided to give everyone something they'd never seen before, and presented a fragrance she'd created. Karina's parents watched from the side, beaming with pride and cheering her on. The ladies were blown away by the show. Paper butterflies fluttered through the hall, infused with this unbelievable scent, the kind you just can't forget. Karina was stoked the guests were having a good time, and the ball was a hit. When she was younger, she thought her role was stealing her boyfriends, but turns out she was the one holding herself back. For the first time in ages, Daniel greeted Madame Butterfly, gave her this super tender look, and actually complimented her. She wished her friend a good night and kept moving, but he called out to her. Daniel asked Karina to dance, and considering everything that's been going on, she was about to say no. Just a few feet away, some champagne glass shattered. Tatia dropped the glass. Looking all pathetic, she asked how he could betray her like that. 4 hours before the ball, TT was freaking out. Not like her at all. She just wanted to get rid of Karina as soon as possible. The maid bringing her tea found the Archduchess with her finger bitten raw, and she was horrified. As she bandaged Tatia's finger, she wondered out loud if the girl should even go to the ball, seeing as how she wasn't feeling so hot. But for the Archduchess, the letter wasn't just an invite, it was a warning. Karina was gunning for her spot. A woman named Titi found out her husband wasn't ready, and she'd have to head out first. Her maid perked her up, saying things would work out. And Tatia agreed, because no matter what anyone said, she knew she was special. When the Archduchess showed up at the ball, all eyes were glued on her again. The girl lived for the admiration, the praise, the envy of others. It was all like medicine for her soul. But tonight, high society wasn't just buzzing about her. Karina's perfume was also grabbing everyone's attention. Lella, who Tatia recognized as Nivea, told her about the scent and asked her to take a whiff, just to experience it. Titi felt uneasy, like something was off. While grabbing some food at the buffet, she caught her loyal admirer, Daniel, out of the corner of her eye. Not only had his affection dropped to 50%, but he'd also snuck in here behind her back. Tatia decided to win the guy back, but when she went after him, she saw something she really didn't like. The girl burst into tears, and Daniel's affection level started going up, just like she planned. Karina jumped into the mix. She was even amused that, being married to an archduke, Titi was flirting with a friend. She left her friends to entertain each other and started heading back the way she came. This time, Daniel couldn't just let it go, and he ran after the princess, begging them to talk it out, all three of them. She didn't get why they needed to. Last time, she made it clear she didn't consider Tatia and Daniel her friends. Looks like they've completely lost their minds if they forgot Karina's nickname from the academy, the one they gave her. Back in her 17th autumn, when Tatia started dating Daniel, she definitely thought she was the main character and had chosen Daniel as her leading man. And that the original's reign was finally over. Because of the original's influence, no matter what Tatia did, people saw her positively. And if Karina got mad at her, she was treated like a villain. So one day, Titi and the guys were hanging out, but Karina wasn't there. Titi was telling them how Daniel confessed that he'd liked her more than Karina since they were kids. The guys figured Karina was just getting in the way. Because Titi was so sweet and beautiful, Karina felt insecure and jealous. That day, Karina heard everything the guys were saying, including that they'd nicknamed her Jealous Princess. She couldn't wrap her head around why they were doing this to her. Titi was the main character, and she was just a side character. But still, Karina thought they were friends. During lunch in the cafeteria, she overheard classmates judging her. Every word felt like a knife twisting in her heart. No matter how much she felt like an outsider, Karina wasn't going to take this lying down. So she asked Titi and Daniel to shut down the rumors. Titi acted all sympathetic, saying she wasn't to blame for any of the gossip. What messed with Karina the most was Daniel. As a friend, he told her that rumors don't just pop up for no reason. So maybe the princess should think about that. Seeing those two, completely contradicting each other, Karina finally got it. It didn't matter what family she came from, what she looked like, or what skills she had because Titi was the main character, and she was just a side character they could trash. Karina called Daniel a coward for not wanting to be the bad guy, and for clamming up when it mattered. If he wanted to keep pretending they were friends, he needed to take a long, hard look at himself. Tatia was playing the victim, bawling her eyes out and accusing the girl of being heartless. All eyes were back on the Archduchess. The guests were saying Princess Pioneer messed up big time, and seeing the girl cry like that was breaking their hearts. Then the Emperor showed up. He thought 2-on-1 was a cheap shot and offered to take the princess's side. Didn't need to, because the Archduke appeared next to Titi. He told his wife to cut the drama and apologize. The girl screamed that she wouldn't and ran off down the stairs. Watching the Emperor and the princess hitting it off, Andrew got a little bummed and took off too. Aster apologized to Karina for being late and whispered something in her ear. He chuckled, because it was a masquerade ball, and she was supposed to keep his identity a secret, even though everyone already knew who he was. After a few more jokes, Aster asked the princess to have some fun with him, and she happily accepted his invitation. The dude hated sweets, but he was still chowing down at the party. The more Karina saw, the cuter he seemed. Aster didn't get why everyone loved masquerades, but after trying one, he started to get it. With a mask, he felt calmer, and knowing each other, they could pretend to be strangers, feeling free without revealing who they were. The guy asked Karina if she felt free. He'd noticed for a while she was always lost in thought and worrying about something. The princess had been betrayed so often, she stopped trusting herself. Guess that's why Karina stressed over everything. She was already drunk and asked to talk about something fun. Since the princess invited the emperor to such a huge party, he decided to return the favor and invite her to the hunting festival at the palace. She was worried the event was too important, and maybe she shouldn't be there. But Aster sensed her burden and said if she accepted the game he caught, that'd be enough. He told her to stop apologizing, because he said he'd always be on her side, so she could be selfish and use him. Whether it was the alcohol or not, Karina's heart was racing like it was about to jump out of her chest. Titi couldn't stand being at the ball anymore, and stood by the wall, head hanging low. Andrew went to the girl so they could head home together, but she refused, scared. Her husband had a gentle voice and warm hands, but a gaze as cold as ice. The guy didn't try to convince his wife, and headed for the exit alone. The girl felt awful. Tatia was hearing rumors about her life with her husband again, begging someone to help her. Titi's bracelet flashed in a special way, like it was giving its owner hope. Looking up, the girl saw Daniel, and her friend offered to walk her home. Outside, they approached a carriage. The guy said it was his ride, and Tatia could hop in and go home. He also added that he was her friend, so Titi could always turn to him. She decided the guy was actually kind to her. Titi reached out to hug Daniel from behind, but he pushed his friend away. The guy admitted that Karina was right, and from now on, he'd keep his distance from the girl. On the way home, Tatia nervously bit at her bandaged fingers. First Andrew, and now Daniel was looking at her like that. This chick figured Karina had to be behind it. There's no way this was natural. She had to get rid of the competition as soon as possible. Some crazy dude blocked the carriage, practically throwing himself under the wheels. The driver slammed on the brakes to avoid running the maniac over. The guy headed straight for the carriage, and the driver tried to stop him, but no dice. Wilhelm yanked the door open, peeked inside to make sure the Archduchess was there, and then climbed right in. She was totally freaked out. First the jolt that squished Titi, and now some random guy was forcing his way in. Wilhelm's affection level was maxing out. With tears in his eyes, he begged her to tell him why she was avoiding him. Tatia cupped his cheek with her hand and told him she was avoiding him for his own good. She said people suspected they were having an affair, but Wilhelm didn't give a damn. He thought being lovers in their time was fine, and he didn't care what anyone else thought, since he'd already given up everything for her. Karina got all the documents and the inheritance. He got kicked out of the guard and almost out of his house. The knight gave it all up just to be with her. Desperate, he wrapped his arms around her, and Titi promised she wouldn't leave him. The Archduke couldn't wrap his head around why Tatia would ask him to take her lover into his guard. Sure, she thought of him as just a friend, but nobody else would see it that way. If Andrew took Wilhelm in, he'd look like a chump who gave his wife's lover his spot. Tatia knew her husband needed power, so she said Wilhelm was one of the Empire's best swordsmen, and if Andrew was strong enough, he could resist the Emperor. After thinking it over, the Archduke agreed with Titi. The guy was ready to accept her lover to get back what was his. Leaving her husband's office, she leaned against the wall, then collapsed to the floor. After the bracelet incident, her dizziness got worse from the stress. But this wasn't the time. Titi needed to focus, or she'd lose to Karina. The masquerade ball was ending. Excited guests thanked the princess for the celebration and asked when the perfume would be released. Judging by the product's good reception, she could play for keeps, maybe even upgrade the packaging and release a collector's edition. Lily, as the princess's biggest fan, was super proud of her that night for how she showed up her haters, and was glad the Emperor showed up for Karina at the right time. The girls wished each other good night, and Karina noticed a bright light coming from the box where she put her bracelet. The princess opened it, and bright light flooded the entire room. A game notification popped up in front of her. One of the endings had been unlocked because Karina took the Sabansi from Wilhelm and started a perfume business. The new notification said that achieving endings weakened the shackles stat, and the princess felt the space around her become freer. Of course, Karina suspected it, but seeing the word shackles with her own eyes was still weird. So, the reason the princess felt a strange increase in Tatia's influence earlier was because she completed Andrew's ending, and the original shackles weakened. Either way, Karina was now sure that viewing the endings weakened the effect. If she watched it, maybe she could see the location of the prestigious Daniel Malfurian Hospital right now. She only finds and sponsors doctors researching new surgical methods. Karina just needed to open the hospital at that location. Reaching the ending with Raymond will be the hardest. He's super hostile towards the princess, and in the ending she knows he gives up his status as master of the magic tower and swears loyalty to Tatia. There's no way Raymond would be loyal to Karina, and he'd be tough to deal with, so she decided to think about it later. First, she needed to hit Daniel. So, the big talk that needed a face-to-face with Daniel was about the western lands of his territory. Even at this late hour, the princess intends to snag them as compensation for calling off the engagement. And Tatia's name pops up again. He'd recently sold her those lands. Karina was floored by her buddy's dumb move. He just sold his land without even asking why. She hit up Nivyatiti before Karina did too, and now she's buying up land. This girl's acting like she knows the original ending, and that ain't just a coincidence. That's when the princess asked Daniel to introduce her to his close friend, who specializes in magic and medicine. Even if it's not in the same place, she'll open a hospital with the same people. Maybe that way, she can actually change things. Daniel stalled again. Karina wouldn't be surprised if Tatia had already snatched up his friend Robert too. Actually, after Robert got kicked out of his family, he and Daniel lost touch. In that case, she asked Daniel to find out where Robert is now. Daniel promised he'd do it, and started apologizing again for what happened back at the academy. If he really was sorry, Karina told him to stop hiding behind the fake act. That was the only way he'd get her forgiveness. The girl sat at her desk thinking. She thought it'd be easy, but she's getting nowhere. No land, and still no doctor. Just in case, she decided to try Raymond's ending. The problem was, Karina wasn't sure how closely the ending had to match the original. The key word in Raymond's ending was Tatia's loyalty. Maybe any action of his that proved loyalty to Karina would count as completing the condition. It was worth experimenting, but Raymond wouldn't swear loyalty to her. Then, suddenly, an idea hit her. A couple days later, one of the Pioneer Estate's knights told the princess in the middle of the night that Raymond had broken into her house. The guards grabbed him and locked him in the food storage, so she rushed to meet her uninvited guest. Everything was working out better than she thought. In the storage room, the guy was tied to a chair with ropes, and his mouth was gagged with cloth. Raymond couldn't say a word, and Karina was actually glad. Finally, the guy stopped being so loud, couldn't use his great magic, and could feel like a normal person. The girl removed the gag from her former lover and told him she had dirt on Tatia. And so, if he really loved her, he should offer Karina a deal. Raymond wasn't about to make a deal with the likes of her. but the princess thought the likes of him should be groveling at her feet. The difference between them was that Karina was self-aware, and he wasn't. Even Carcel's own family rejected him, and he still hadn't become master of the magic tower. Plus, because of his awful personality, he had tons of enemies. But he was never short on arrogance. Karina grabbed the guy by the collar, saying she knew he'd sneak into her place the second she sent that letter. She could see right through guys like him. Raymond tried telling the princess she wasn't any better, but she just laughed. She wasn't the same naive Karina from the academy, incapable of dirty tricks. Unlike the fire incident, she had solid proof he'd broken into her home. Raymond would be instantly disqualified from becoming master of the magic tower. And then, she'd leak Tatia's recording to the royal court. Starting a fire and insulting the emperor? Best case, hard labor. Worst case, off with his head. Raymond asked what she wanted, and she joked that she wanted his body, which got a rise out of him. Getting down to business, Karina laid out her terms. The royal hunt was coming up, and he had to present her with all the game, proving his loyalty and love. Of course, the guy wasn't thrilled, but his options were limited. Either kiss the Tower Master gig goodbye, or swallow his pride just this once. The princess sent for the guards to release Ray, giving him some time to think things over until then. Since Karina couldn't take Raymond's word for it, she presented him with a contract. All he had to do was sign. The document's contents made him blow a fuse. During the royal hunt, he had to give all the game to Karina, and until then, he had to obey her every command without question. Break the contract, and he'd lose all his magic and his shot at the Tower Master position. In the end, Carcel had to agree, and he signed the damn thing. The girl put a spell on the contract, and a mark appeared on the guy's neck. His magic still hadn't come back, and Raymond was pissed he couldn't use it. He started barking orders again, which made Karina flip, and she kicked him out. Raymond swore he'd curse her for all eternity if he got offed by some street thugs. Meanwhile, some creep was watching the mage from the bushes. Standing out on the street, Carcel was already regretting not listening to Titi. The guy refused to summon someone to kill Karina, and she threw a fit. The Archduchess screamed that Ray was a liar, since he promised he'd do anything for her. Truth was, the mage wasn't exactly dying to end up in prison. Plus, he didn't hate the princess enough to kill her. Titi accused the guy of being just like all men, and was about to leave. Raymond begged the Archduchess not to go, and pulled a ring out of a drawer. It was made of woodstone with mind control magic. If she'd used it right, all her drama with Karina could have been solved. Plus, the ring didn't leave any magical residue, so Titi had nothing to sweat. Her face changed instantly, and she threw herself into Raymond's arms. Feeling bad for the guy, Karina finally opened the door. Judging by his guilty look, he'd been out there bad-mouthing her the whole time. The princess asked if Ray's powers were back, and he proudly showed off what he could do. As a show of kindness to her slave, the girl assigned him a guard. Watching what was happening, the stranger in the tree regretted missing such a prime opportunity. Outside, Duke Daniel latched onto Karina, claiming the area was super dangerous, and he also wanted to see Robert. Loan sharks were causing a ruckus near the medic's place, the kind who are definitely on the wrong side of the law. Daniel offered to take care of the guys. The princess had no idea he could be so brave. Stuttering like an idiot, he tried to explain, but the fat guy pinned him to the wall, telling him to wait his turn. Malfurian apologized to the girl, saying he couldn't do anything. Daniel was just being himself. Karina yelled to get the guy's attention, then whistled as loud as she could. The knight landed right in front of the girl, ready to protect her. Empire law forbids unregistered people from giving loans or credit. As a city guard, he had every right to arrest them. Daniel was clueless about what just happened, so the girl explained. His Majesty assigned her a bodyguard. Walking into the house, the youngsters called out for Robert, who wasn't yet in sight. Karina found the man under the table. He was begging for his life, promising he'd pay back the debt. Recognizing the familiar faces, Robert finally got up off the floor and greeted his guests. The princess introduced herself and asked the man for a moment of his time. Robert recognized her. She was the same girl Daniel had broken off his engagement with, and he was glad they were back together. Karina set Robert straight, telling him he was mistaken, and actually, she came to offer him the position of chief physician at the hospital. The guy said they had the wrong address, because someone like him has no right to be a doctor. Even though she didn't know the whole story, or the exact reasons why, she knew that 3 years ago, his research was put on hold. Karina pleaded with him to become a doctor at her hospital and continue his research. Robert was grateful for the honor, but suggested more worthy candidates than himself, Erica Foreman and Allison Cameron, the doctors he conducted his research with. He couldn't say anything more and asked the young people to leave. Sure, Karina didn't remember everything exactly, but she was sure that by the end of the game, there were 3 doctors. Daniel told her that all 3 studied and worked at Dr. Gregory's lab. But as far as he knew, after the doctor died of an incurable disease, they went their separate ways. Foreman comes from a poor family, and after the lab closed, he dropped out of school due to financial problems. And Allison works as Tatia's attending physician. It wasn't really that Daniel was hiding it from Karina, she just never asked. And besides, she always got in a bad mood when it came to Tatia. This dude was always blaming chance for the princess and archduchess's relationship, so the girl asked if he accidentally dumped her and hooked up with Tatia too. Daniel wanted everyone to see him as a good guy, but Karina just ended up seeing him as a straight-up hypocrite. This girl wasn't expecting her friend's help anyway, but Raymond couldn't end up like he did in the game. She hoped Daniel would get exactly what he deserved from the original story. So, she needed to get those three together and appoint Robert as chief physician. But first, she had to figure out what was going on between them. Daniel stopped Karina. He could help her in some way, since he knew where Eric Foreman was. Turns out, Mr. Foreman was working in the community lab. Tatia had gotten him the job at Ms. Allison's request. It's Tatia again. Karina figured the Archduchess was involved with this trio of doctors, just like she was with Nivea. The two of them met Eric, and Karina introduced herself to him. She asked why he hadn't continued his research, and he said that money had always been important to him because of his social standing. All that studying Foreman did helped him make ends meet now. The girl explained that Robert had recommended him, but it turned out the friends weren't talking anymore. Anyway, Karina was planning on opening a hospital, so she invited the guy to join the team to keep her research going. 4-day work week, flexible hours, paid vacation. She promised better perks than his current gig. Of course, he didn't have to decide right away. So if Foreman had any questions, he could send a letter to the Pioneer family estate. As a final thing, the doctor asked Karina to tell Robert something, if their paths ever crossed again. Tell him they didn't have a choice back then. Later, the butler handed the girl a letter, which the doctor had in fact sent. Along with the letter, the guy also provided documents with info from the association, which could shed light on what went down between those three. Just like Karina thought, it happened in that same month, 3 years ago. After Professor Allison died, she became Tatia's attending physician. At the same time, the girl contacted Nivea. All right, if the princess was planning a meeting with Allison, there was only one day that would work. Just then, Lily burst into the room, breathless, rushing to report something. The girl blurted out that something awful had happened. She was so out of breath, she couldn't get a coherent sentence out, so the butler went to grab her some water. Finally, after catching her breath, Lily spilled that a new perfume boutique just popped up right across the street from the store they were about to open. And get this, the boutique belongs to the Marquis Haunt family, not the Duke of Gloucester's. Guess Tatia didn't want to make a direct move, so she's using the Marquis for this scheme. Rumor has it that Lord Wilhelm was appointed Master of the Silver Dragon Knight Order, which belongs to the Gloucester ducal family. Of course, Lily was pissed that a guy like him became Master of the Order. Karina had a feeling Tatia sent Wilhelm, who had nowhere else to go, to the Order. And in return, she asked him to open the boutique. Lily totally understood it wasn't a coincidence either, and she was even more furious. Well, you could see this coming. Plus, a competitor showing up nearby is just part of doing business. Karina wasn't sweating it at all, figured every crisis is a chance to make her boutique even better. After hearing that, the princess got the girls together, so they could all chill for a second and figure out the next move. Now that their new fragrance dropped at the masquerade last week, they've got a fresh problem on their hands. Namely, a competitor just plopped down right across the street from them. Since that sleazy perfume shop beat them to opening by, like, 2 days, they had to stomp out this competitor that doesn't know squat about business ethics. The fire of rage was lit, and the girls were all in on Karina's plan. No objections. Only one thing on the agenda today. They were pushing back the boutique's opening. After that announcement, Lily, Nivea, and Lella just stood there with their jaws dropped. You'd think with a rival popping up, they'd be rushing to open, especially since the masquerade ball got their perfume buzzing. Karina passed around a document with names. These were customers who were ready to buy the second they got a whiff of the perfume at the ball. First off, they'd sell a batch of the perfume to all 100 big shots on that list. Like the ladies already saw at the ball, gossip spreads like wildfire in a small pond, like the aristocracy. Word about their perfume will go viral, and when everyone's buzzing and interest is at its peak, they'll open the boutique right after the royal hunt. It'll be the best damn perfume shop in the empire, Nivea and Lella's. So they weren't about to freak out and rush to open the store now. Instead, they'd wait, build up their strength, and let their brand grow. Karina had 2 points on that. The first floor would have the mass market perfume lines for the average customer, and the second and third floors would be the premium stuff. Nivea decided to pitch an idea she'd been holding back on because of money issues. It was about creating a basic cosmetics line using the scents of their perfumes. like some bath products or body lotions, would go great with their core fragrances. That way, even people who aren't big on perfume could enjoy those amazing scents. And plus, the perfume would really pop when used with the cosmetics. On top of everything, by mixing the cosmetics and perfumes, everyone could create a unique scent unlike anything else. But there was one huge snag. To make the cosmetics scent last, we'd need to involve alchemy. Word was, the Carcel family got a patent for working in that field 3 years back, so we'd need their help to pull this off. Coincidentally, 3 years ago, after the Archduchess left and funding dried up, all the alchemists, including the Carcel family, cut ties with Nivea, and she was still pissed about it. Karina told her not to sweat it and promised she'd find her an alchemist. That's when Nivea suggested Raymond Carcel, and the princess wasn't exactly following. Her gut told her that Archduchess Tatia was in cahoots with the Carcel family alchemists who were registered with the association. They acted like any contact with her would be a total disaster for them, but Raymond was different. Sure, he wasn't part of the association, but he was still a Carcel and an alchemist himself, so he could probably find loopholes. Okay, yeah, he's the reason Nivea lost her recipes and her sense of smell, but she wasn't gonna let some fleeting emotions screw up her work. Right now, their top priority was launching this business and making it a success. Karina noticed Nivea had changed a lot since they first met, like she'd finally spread her wings. She told the woman that she really was a strong person. Now, Nivea was completely sure she'd believe in her and her daughter's strength and keep pushing forward. Just like Karina thought, choosing Nivea as her partner was the best call. All right, time to get in touch with Raymond and use their contract. But even though the princess agreed to work with him, she was against Nivea meeting the guy in person. Karina was hoping the woman would accept her as the go-between. Even if they were strategic allies now, she absolutely had to get proper revenge later. The girl visited Raymond to tell him about a job where she'd need his help. The mage laughed, saying even though they signed a contract, he wasn't her servant. And besides, his magic powers were back, so she should take her guard and leave. Karina said he was just scared she'd make him do something weird, and the guy immediately started denying it. The girl handed him a few sheets of paper, outlining everything he needed to do. The princess promised to cover all the research expenses. Raymond was surprised by this order, since she could have asked someone from his family. He was a mage aiming to be the Grand Master of the Magic Tower, so he wasn't thrilled about doing alchemy. He was a genius alchemist as a kid, but no matter how much he hated the science now, or how he felt about his family, Karina didn't care. They had a contract, and he couldn't disobey her. Raymond rubbed the seal on his neck and promised she'd find out what was coming once the contract expired. Karina had already drawn up the contract, and he just had to sign it. All the research materials were ready. All he had to do was conduct the research as specified in the papers. Raymond signed the contract, even though he thought the girl was acting arrogant. On Karina's orders, the guard was to stay with the mage for a while, since he needed to be watched closely. He might be plotting something, wouldn't wait for the contract to end, or steal secret recipes. Nobody knew what was going on in the guy's head. Raymond got flustered, since he was uncomfortable with a stranger in his house. But the guard, comfortably settled in Raymond's armchair, was perfectly at ease. The experiment was supposed to kick off next week. End of discussion. And with that, Karina headed for the door. While she was sorting through paperwork back in her chambers, Lily brought her some tea. Lately, the princess had been burning the candle at both ends, barely resting since opening the boutique. Since she'd finalized the deal today, Lily suggested she take a real break, but Karina was still brainstorming the layout for the boutique's 3rd floor. Before the royal hunt even started, she needed to oversee the building's construction, double-check customer addresses, monitor the perfume development, and design the packaging. Plus, Raymond had tons of enemies. According to the guards, half the kingdom wanted him dead. Karina didn't particularly care about his fate, but there could be a leak about their recipes, so she needed to investigate who was hanging around the guy. The princess had a point, but she was working so hard and constantly busy that Lily was worried. So, she insisted that she relax and take a bath, and she'd even give her a massage. Karina jumped up, stoked, because that was exactly what she needed. They could open a spa on the 3rd floor, offering massages using their brand's products. Lily cried out in despair, because she told her to relax, but she was still thinking about work. Guess being an entrepreneur was just in Karina's blood. Later that day, the emperor was sipping tea in one of his palace halls. What was weird was he wanted to meet with Mrs. Pioneer, not her daughter. The woman had implied she was short on time. Astor had heard Lord Raymond illegally entered the duchy recently, and didn't get why she was going so easy on him. Karina's mom frowned, not following what he was getting at. She didn't hesitate to sacrifice her hair for her daughter, but it seemed like Raymond was still doing all right. The emperor knew Raymond hated the princess, and figured Mrs. Pioneer knew too, so she must have set a trap on him, suppressing his magic. The woman asked if he meant that's why she was letting Raymond threaten her daughter. Aster wanted to say no, but he was worried about his girl too. Mrs. Pioneer thought His Majesty was seeing her daughter for political reasons, so she was surprised he had a human side to him. Her biggest regret in life was introducing her daughter to Raymond, because she thought they were a good match. They weren't like the other kids, acting all grown up, like they were hiding something, but they were totally alike in their weird way, unable to just blend in. The woman was dead wrong. She wasn't just a bad mom, she also scarred her only daughter for life. So, the Emperor didn't get why she left Raymond in the running to control the magic tower, because she could have cut candidates, right? Mrs. Pioneer said it didn't matter, because Raymond wasn't going to control the magic tower anyway. About 10 years back, she and Raymond met in the old Carcel lab. She was there to pick up an order the lab was working on, and she just bumped into the kid. Raymond looked way too young to be an employee, so she was wondering who he was. One of the guys told her he was a Carcel kid, said he was a freaking genius at alchemy, so they stuck him in there. The kid was super skinny, looked like he was covered in scars and needle pricks. Too bad Mrs. Pioneer couldn't talk to him then. Lab rules said only employees could talk to other employees. So, using her magic, she sent a flower petal from the second floor right into the kid's hands on the first. The woman thanked the employee for the order and hurried off. Raymond didn't realize what had just happened at that point. Later that night, on the research center's third floor, the boy was in one of the test subject rooms, lying in bed, staring at the petal. The thing started glowing, then flooded the room with this bright pink light. At that exact moment, Freya Pioneer appeared in front of Raymond, the same woman who'd visited their lab earlier that day. She explained she was just a passing-by mage and asked what the young alchemy genius's name was. The boy introduced himself as Carcel 3627. It sounded more like a street address than a name. Anyway, after their meeting, Freya decided to check out some of the lab's records. Turns out they were running secret, but super interesting experiments called Project Mage. Kids who had little to no magic were injected with illegally synthesized, alchemically created magical power, which then started regenerating on its own in their bodies, creating an artificially made mage. The experiment resulted in the death of all 11 test subjects, except for the boy. And even though he's the only one left, he's only half a success. No matter how many potions they pumped into Carcel, he still barely had any magical juice. The kid was 11 or 12, about the same age as Freya's daughter. She couldn't believe how scrawny the kid was, and handed him a roll, hoping he'd at least eat that. The boy practically inhaled the food. Looks like they weren't feeding him anything here. Freya didn't know how to break the news she was about to drop. More than likely, Carcel would be dead before he even hit puberty. The alchemists might be fools messing with him, but to a talented mage like her, it was obvious. It wasn't that he had little magic. She channeled the boy's energy flow towards herself to gauge its amount. The problem was, he was overflowing with magic, way more than he could control. If he kept that much magic inside him, eventually, like his little buddies, he'd explode and die. Tears streamed down the kid's face. But Freya didn't mean to scare him this bad. She promised to tell him how to survive. But in return, Carcel couldn't tell anyone she helped him. He had to keep it a secret for life. From that day on, she'd teach him how to control magic every night, so he could escape the lab. After the escape, the kid had to go to the Mages Association and show them the letter of recommendation. Once he was a member, it'd be tough for the alchemist to hurt him. But on the flip side, he'd also become an enemy of the Carcel family and live as a wanderer. Carcel 3627 was even ready to give up his last name, but she told him to keep it. In the future, if he ever got any power, that name would come in handy when the truth comes out. He couldn't use a name made of numbers on official documents, so Freya was racking her brain, trying to figure out what to call the kid. After running through different options, they finally settled on Carcel Raymond. So, Raymond became part of the Mages Association, and even a candidate for the next Master of the Magic Tower. Truth is, the Carcel family's experiment was only half successful. The first law of alchemy says, to get something, you gotta give up something of equal value. Raymond started out as a regular magicless kid, but now he's packing serious magical heat, a candidate to run the Magic Tower, all thanks to alchemy-made magic. He's gonna have to pay the piper eventually. Karina, with her entourage in tow, showed up to deliver research materials to the guy. Blood trickled from Raymond's mouth. Thanks to Freya teaching him magic, he got lucky and made it to adulthood. But the bill's coming due real soon. A guard greeted the princess at the door after she heard the coughing. Raymond was inside, but he was in rough shape, so they should probably call a doctor. Right then and there, the dude just face-planted, scaring the crap out of everyone. Karina sat at the head of the bed where they'd laid the mage. She reached out her hand to Raymond, and he instantly grabbed it, clearly thinking she was Tatia. In his sleep, he mumbled that he'd try harder and begged her not to leave him. The girl asked the guard if anything happened before she arrived, but nothing had. At least, Raymond was fine this morning, and then he suddenly started coughing up blood. Besides that, the guy wanted to talk about something else. Those assassins he mentioned last time. According to him, most of them were sent by the Carcel family, the same family Raymond belonged to. Karina wondered what you'd have to do to have your own family try to kill you. But snapping back to reality, the mage declared it was none of her business. Raymond couldn't figure out why he passed out, since he's never had health problems. So he kept pretending he was super strong and brushed off the fainting spell as just being a little tired. In that case, Karina asked if he wanted to let go of her hand, and he immediately snatched it back. Looks like he was back to normal, so she was about to leave. The doctor should be here soon, and she told Raymond to focus on getting better until he was fully recovered. She originally wanted to give him some alchemy stuff, so she left everything on the table so he could get to work once he recovered. But for today, he could just rest and heal. Raymond was surprised he was allowed to rest, although, of course, he wouldn't be able to work properly in his condition. Karina handed him a small bottle of aromatherapy oil that helped with fatigue. Lily personally made it, so it was even a little sad to give it away. Although it would be tragic if the guy died before finishing the job. The girl headed for the exit, and Raymond started making noises like he was gonna say thanks. But of course, that was way beyond him. So the dude just told her not to expect any gratitude. Karina told him to just take the oil as a gift, start the research, and stay on schedule. Since Raymond thought he was a genius wizard, he promised he'd make cosmetics even better than she deserved. When the girl finally left, a blush spread across his face. The guy couldn't believe he'd appeared before the princess looking like such a scrub. Back in her chambers, Tatia was examining the ring Raymond had given her. It looked like it was made for a dude, since it was way too big. That time, Ray told her he'd help, but then he disappeared. So she was sure that by giving her the ring, he was just trying to get rid of her, and that's it. Tatia's head started pounding again. Lately, whenever she thought about something serious, a migraine would hit her right away. Of all the times, Andrew decided to walk into the room. The girl subtly tossed the magic ring back with the rest of her jewelry. The husband was heading to the palace. The imperial hunt season was about to kick off. Karina had to be there too. It was an official event. Plus, it was Emperor Aster's first hunt since he took the throne. It'd look weird if she was hooking up with the emperor and skipped out on something like this. So Tatia volunteered to go as well. Andrew asked his wife to spill what she was planning, and she reminded him about her promise to make him emperor. She told him to trust her and promised she'd get back everything he'd lost. Raymond was reading a letter from Karina, telling him to make good on his promise at the imperial hunt. He glanced at a vial of oil, then apologized to someone in his head because he'd already made up his mind. In the Duke's estate guest room, Tatia and Wilhelm were talking about how the boutique was doing. The guy did exactly as she said, so customers were lining up, and the perfume named after her was almost completely sold out after only a day. Ethan Carcel, that heir, he helped things blow up too, spreading the word that Tatia wore the scent all the time, which made everyone want to buy it. At this rate, everyone's gonna forget about Karina's perfume, the one that everyone talks about, but nobody can actually get their hands on. 873. Like a happy puppy, Wilhelm kept saying his girl wasn't just gorgeous, she was talented too, and the word perfect was invented just for her. She'd heard from some lady friends that pre-orders were open for Karina's limited edition scent, so Tatia was wondering if there were any news about the perfume store opening. Wilhelm knew from the association that Karina was planning to push the opening back, so he thought she was scared and ran away with her tail between her legs. Tatia, on the other hand, thought her former friend was cooking up another nasty scheme. Her boyfriend backed her up, saying that unlike her, who was honest and sincere, there was always something rotten and low-down about that princess. TT got up and started to leave, but Wilhelm stopped her, suggesting they go check on their store. He was clearly overestimating himself, and she told him that she and Andy had plans for today. This time, the Archduke showed up at the perfect moment. He was wondering why the knight wasn't at training. Tatia, laying a hand on the guy's shoulder, sweat was already pouring down his face from the pressure, told him they were handling some shop business, but he was free to go now. After Will bolted out, slamming the door, Andrew remarked that he looked at his wife like a loyal puppy, like she owned him, not the other way around. The Archduke headed outside before it got dark, and Tatia grabbed his arm, trying to stop him. The guy yanked his arm away, accidentally knocking the girl to the floor. 885. He asked her to lay off the touching, and Tatia apologized. No biggie, she'd get another chance. In the 3rd district, on Varus Shopping Street, the Archduke and Archduchess strolled along to the cheerful comments of passers-by. At one point, the girl overheard someone suggesting it was all for show. Since rumor had it, things weren't so smooth between them. She glanced around, but there was no one nearby. To Tatia's surprise, her husband took her hand and suggested they walk some more. He figured the more people saw them together, the better their reputation would be. So, drawing more attention to themselves like this actually worked in their favor too. It didn't take long for people to react. Two girls immediately rushed over to them. They'd last seen the Duke at the masquerade ball and wanted to know what brought him here. Tatia explained that her husband was usually busy with his duties at the palace, so they finally had some time today and decided to go on a date. The girls squealed with delight, but lamented that the center of the street was blocked off on such a beautiful day. Apparently, some aristocrat paid a fortune to all the boutiques in the first block and rented out that part of the street for the day. They said he organized all this for his sweetheart. Talk about limitless love. Now the girls decided to find out when the couple was planning on having kids. They figured if such a gorgeous couple had a son, it would be amazing. The emperor still wasn't married, and if they had an heir, he'd become the crown prince. Tatia put her arms around her husband's shoulders, telling the girls that for now, they just wanted to spend more time alone together. Andrew chuckled, like he was embarrassed in public. But this was going too far. The kids were useless. He was planning to take the emperor's place himself as soon as Aster was dead. Then, he'd divorce and go back to Karina, who was now walking up to them. Tatia was definitely not happy to see her, and Andrew was a little flustered, clueless about why the princess was here. It was almost funny. Being family with the emperor, they didn't know she was meeting His Majesty in the first district today. Tatia, barely holding it together, finally screamed that it was a lie. After that outburst, the girl finally realized she'd screwed up. Titi couldn't let Karina be with the man she couldn't get. Someone like her just wasn't good enough for the emperor. Andrew found a way out, saying the Duchess and the princess were old friends. Plus, Tatia was now part of the imperial family, and the Duchess not knowing about her meeting with His Majesty must sting. Tite confirmed how happy she was that her bestie was seeing the emperor. But for a second, she thought it was a lie, so she got a little upset, and it just slipped out. Karina was totally cracking up at the show. She didn't owe anyone an explanation about her love life, and besides, she was already late, so she was out of there. She took a couple steps, but then Titi stopped her, asking her to tag along. She and the emperor were practically family, but lately he'd been so swamped, they hadn't gotten a chance to catch up. She just wanted to say hi. Even though Karina was feeling the pressure, she just told her to do whatever she wanted. As they walked down the street together, Titi was checking out the princess. She was eye-catching, sure, but still kinda bland and aloof. Titi couldn't figure out why the emperor was still seeing such a basic chick. 'Cause let's be real, she was way better. Andrew, who knew his wife's tells, could already tell she was plotting something nasty. Finally, the three of them reached the emperor, and Karina greeted him with a touch of his hand. Needless to say, he wasn't nearly as stoked to see the others. They bowed and gave His Majesty their greetings too. Aster, deciding not to intrude on the couple's date, said his goodbyes. But Titi stopped him. Fidgeting with her bead, the girl started saying that she and the princess had been in the academy together since childhood, close friends with no secrets. But since their relationship started, many secrets had come between them. Already starting to cry, Tatia continued, saying if they hadn't bumped into each other by chance, she wouldn't have even known about their relationship. So it felt like His Majesty was stealing her friend. The emperor, who thought this was a great opportunity for her to become more independent, was good-natured, but firm. Being adults, knowing every step of your friend would be weird. The girl hesitated for a second, but then, grabbing Aster's sleeve, suggested they all get together for lunch. First, they needed to make a connection with the emperor. Karina's presence was super annoying, but this way the emperor could see the difference between them and realize the Duchess was better than that chick. Tatia added that harmony in the family is super important. When the emperor understands that, he'll choose her, and he won't even notice Karina suddenly disappearing. If both Andrew and Aster became infatuated with her, she wouldn't even know which one to make emperor. A loud laugh from Aster filled the space around them. Family harmony was an unbelievably hilarious concept to him in this situation. Andrew immediately began to apologize, but there was nothing to apologize for. They amused him so much that there was nothing to feel guilty about. Tatia should have worried more about her own family before sticking her nose in her childhood friend's relationship. If the Duke had just told his wife a little more about their past, those words wouldn't have even crossed her mind. Like, if he'd mentioned what his dead father did to the emperor, or about the second prince who died in that treason plot. He could have also filled her in on the day everyone calls the Prince's Rebellion. Andrew said he'd bring the Duchess up to speed, and they finally said their goodbyes. The emperor apologized for making the princess wait so long. They only exchanged a couple of words, but he could already tell Tatia was a piece of work. Aster couldn't figure out why guys fell for her act, but Karina was just glad he didn't take her side. Tatia would totally use her bracelet on the emperor too. but for some reason, he's still ice cold to her. Andrew found it funny that she asked him to trust her, but it was all she could show him, even with that bracelet. She claimed what happened was like a training exercise, but she started biting her finger, something she'd never done before. A game window popped up in front of Aster, indicating that she couldn't conquer this object. The Emperor actually rented out the entire first block of Varus Street. He needed to check on a hunting outfit being made, but it's usually crowded, and he thought it could be dangerous. Karina knew renting a whole block was no easy feat, especially since he probably had to hide his identity. It would have been way easier to have the outfit sent straight to the palace. Of course, she was right. But Aster wanted to go on a date with her, since they might not see each other for a long time after the masquerade ball. He figured maybe his attention was tiring her out, since she was already busy. But Karina was actually glad for the chance to take a break from all the work and stress. Aster was acting weird, like he was upset with the princess about something. How great would it be to jump inside his head right now and figure out what he's thinking? The couple ended up at the door of a tailor shop called Boutique de Maza. The guy who greeted them inside was on his hands and knees on the floor, eagerly attending to the guests. He figured they were loaded aristocrats. You could smell the money on them a mile away. Time to bleed these suckers dry and leave them penniless. They already had 10 custom-made outfits ready for each of them, based on their measurements, so all they had to do was pick what they liked. Aster was thrown, because the princess didn't need an outfit for the hunt. At the ball, she agreed to take the game he caught. She hadn't told him she wanted to join in, and already sent her measurements to the tailor. She really did have a knack for surprising the Emperor. Truth was, Karina planned to run into Allison on the hunt, but she couldn't tell the guy. He'd try to talk her out of it, so she just forced a laugh, acting like she wasn't up to anything. This couldn't go on forever, so she started sending out SOS signals to one of the staff, giving him a subtle wink. Aster was trying to get something out of her, and the tailor jumped in, saying the outfits were ready for fitting, so they had to cut the conversation short. She needed to come up with some kind of explanation before the Emperor got back. From His Majesty's point of view, it might look like she was hiding a lot, but she wasn't used to asking for or trusting anyone. She went rogue during the fire, though she would have been toast without Andrew's help. Karina didn't tell him about teaming up with Raymond on the perfume boutique. She also kept quiet about the hospital plans. His Majesty always just offered a helping hand, no questions asked. Honestly, even her bringing Andrew and Tatia today caught him completely off guard. Looking at it that way, it could really seem like she's a heartless lover. By now, Aster had already changed and stood before her, wanting her opinion on the suit. Karina gave him a genuine compliment, and the Emperor was thrilled she liked it. Now all that was left was to try on the other 9 suits. Of course, the princess wanted to watch, but the sun would set before he finished trying everything on. The only solution was to buy all the suits and send someone to pick them up later. Karina told Aster they hadn't been on a date in forever, and she really wanted to take a walk and talk. Once outside, the girl just let out a whoop of pure joy. She'd always wanted to do that at least once. Just yell her head off in the middle of the city. The two of them hadn't been able to just chill and walk around without worrying about who was watching for so long, and now it was all thanks to the Emperor. But he figured it was because the princess had actually carved out some time in her crazy schedule. From that moment on, she wanted to be more honest with him. She took Aster's hand, and if he was cool with it, offered to share a story from her past, back when she was a junior in the academy. Back then, she and Titi had agreed to do their graduation project together, but her friend was just now saying she was already on another team. If she'd said something sooner, Karina could have found another team, because failing a group project meant graduating a year late. Titi begged her to understand. Daniel had been on her team since last year, and Raymond said he wouldn't work without her. But unfortunately, they couldn't have 4 people on a team. So, Daniel offered to quit his team and work with Karina, but she turned him down, deciding to handle it solo. Honestly, this situation was nothing new for her. She'd been flying solo for the past 3 years at the academy. She knew perfectly well she was too trusting, but somehow, even knowing that, she always ended up getting played. Then, after Karina's run-in with Andrew, the professor called them in to discuss their graduation project. Graduation required a group project, and their names were the only ones not on any team list. They could team up, and the professor would add them to the list, and Andrew jumped at the idea. But Karina insisted on doing the project alone. She didn't care if her grade dropped, as long as she could graduate. Seeing that Andrew, being the new guy, was hesitant about doing a project alone, the professor gave them until next week to figure things out. He added that Karina would have a much easier time doing the project with someone rather than alone, and they could avoid a grade reduction, then dismissed them until the next class. Andrew asked if the princess might want to do the project together after all. He'd only just transferred and hadn't made any friends yet. The fact that Andrew Lovron transferred so late in the game tells me there's some messy history there. Either way, if he tried getting close to a girl, the rumors would fly. Karina told him point blank she was doing her graduation project solo, so he should find another team. Then she just walked off, didn't even give him a chance to reply. Immediately, other female students swarmed him, saying Karina was known for having zero manners, and talking to her always ruined your day. They insisted he should team up with them, instead of wasting his time on her. From Karina's perspective, though, that was probably a good thing. Every time she showed her face around campus, it was gossip central. Everyone talked behind her back, even though they knew nothing about her. They spread rumors about her low self-esteem and called her a rude bitch. But if she really had such a terrible personality, she wouldn't just take all the insults lying down, right? Sure, the gossip used to get to her, but now she didn't care. Anyway, this whole thing was just a game rigged for the main characters. A fake world. Tears wouldn't fix anything, and crying and getting angry was pointless. So, finally alone among the trees, Karina just took a bite of her sandwich. Let her boyfriend leave. Let her friends turn their backs. Let them accuse her of things she didn't do. She didn't give a damn. The girl was chowing down when she heard someone coming her way. It was Andrew, and it looked like he thought he was all alone out here. She told him she was almost done, so he could stick around if he wanted. Noticing she barely touched her sandwich, the new kids started to bail, but then offered to eat together. Nobody could see them out here anyway, so the girl didn't really care. The silence while they ate was super awkward, so Karina decided to ask Andrew how his senior project team was going. Even though the princess thought he'd teamed up with Sophie and Ruby, the dude still hadn't found anyone and refused to join the girls. He didn't want anything to do with people who talk smack about someone they don't even know, and that made Karina kinda uneasy. He also clued her in that they put stickers in the sandwiches under the wrapper. And after that day, the girls started having lunch with Andrew. Little by little, they started hanging out more. And even though his family wasn't nearly as high status, she didn't give a damn. Truth was, his low social standing meant he wouldn't be a main character, and Karina was more than okay with that. Andrew was easy to be around, even when they were just quiet. But they could also talk about literally anything. During her toughest times, he was the only one on her side. Only with him was she herself, not just the main character's friend. Fall hit. Graduation was just one semester away. But thanks to Andrew, her last year at the academy was full of good memories. People talked about Karina's relationship with him and his status, but she didn't care about the hate or the insults thrown her way. It wasn't like she didn't worry at all. She just put up with it. But it hurt that Andrew was getting humiliated because of her. Just as she snapped at some gossips, a man approached her. He was holding a letter sent from the Pioneer family's duchy. Skimming the text, Karina was horrified. Trouble had come from where she least expected it. Andrew, stoked to see his girl, instantly changed his expression when he saw she was crying. The letter said her mom was missing. It happened a year and a half after her parents split. After the divorce, Mom didn't have a permanent place to live. She kept moving around because of her research, and during one of those trips, she vanished in the mountains without a trace. Karina could look back on that time calmly now, knowing she came back okay. But back then, it felt like her world was falling apart. She was terrified that her mom wouldn't return, scared that the people closest to her would just keep disappearing one by one, and she'd end up completely alone. Karina didn't understand why everyone was leaving her. Maybe she just shouldn't have been born. And Andrew couldn't believe she could say something like that. Sometimes, she imagined a world where she was the main character, surrounded by real friends, and a guy who genuinely loved her. No one looked down on her. They valued her for her actions. A world without unexpected tragedies, where she was happy and loved every single day. That was the main character's life. Right then, Andrew came up behind her and hugged her tight, tears streaming down his face. He promised he'd make her world amazing, always be there for her, never change, and love her forever. Andrew's confession sounded so sweet back then, but Karina's anxiety was only growing, because she didn't know if she could trust him. She wanted him to get along with the other guys, but she also wanted to be with him, desperate to believe him, and she loved him, but feared he'd bail on her too. But these thoughts got her nowhere. Whatever, Karina, being a side character, couldn't do anything anyway. Might as well not even think about it. One weekday, they ran into Tatia. She asked Karina if she wanted to check out a new cafe with her and Daniel. But Karina had other plans. TT knew Andrew was her plans, so she just said goodbye, figuring there was nothing she could do. Insults were thrown at the guy from all around. The students thought he was a gold digger and couldn't understand why they were together. It seemed to Karina that Tatia was staring at Andrew way too hard, like she was plotting to steal him away from her again. His character wasn't even in the original story, so everything should be fine. Andrew's got nothing to do with the main plot. They just gotta stop running into each other. When the dude started sticking his nose in, Karina was like, "It won't do any good. You can't just shut everyone up." Anyway, rumors are just rumors. The only thing that matters is we know the truth. Andrew just wanted them to stop talking smack, and she shot back that some random Viscount's kid stepping in isn't gonna change a thing, when even a princess couldn't make a difference. If it was something easy he could just talk his way out of, it'd be a whole different ballgame. He could keep pretending he's the main character, but they're both just extras in this story. She kept saying stuff that hurt him, even though she didn't mean it that way, and didn't even know why she was doing it. If he wasn't just some Viscount's son, but the crown prince, maybe things would be different. From that day on, Andrew started spending a lot of time alone. After a while, he admitted that he actually liked Tatia. The guy who promised he'd never leave her ended up ditching her all alone. That's when Karina realized that forever love is total BS. So she basically stopped believing in the whole idea of love altogether. She figured His Majesty asked her out, not because he loved her, but for political gain. Still, he was always good to her and had her back, so she wanted to pay him back for it. Sure, it'd be tough to tell him everything now, but she almost pulled off that revenge plot against Tatia. Karina took Aster's hand, giving him the green light to use her too, building a relationship based on honesty and mutual gain. Brimming with resolve, she asked the guy to marry her. He already had the biggest military and political clout in the empire, but because of the terror attacks early on, his approval rating with the people was pretty low. So basically, the dude needed the support of the aristocracy. To fix that, he could influence high society using Karina's family's position. So that proposal he made on the day they first met? Karina was ready to say yes, but the emperor's face wasn't exactly lighting up with joy. Clearly bummed, he let go of her hand. Aster couldn't figure out if she really thought that was the day they first met. That line was a total mystery to Karina, but he wasn't about to explain it. I mean, getting a proposal on the first day was pretty wild, and Karina was definitely thrown by what he said. Yeah, it was a total shock, especially since she was hammered and acting a fool that day. But he still helped her out. She must have really overdone it with the booze and been out of it. Aster honestly thought the princess was a really good, smart, and interesting woman. Even so, he still turned down her proposal. Karina was totally confused why he was acting like this, since it was his idea in the first place. Aster explained they barely knew each other, so they shouldn't rush things, but they could decide later. That was the end of the conversation, and the girl didn't know what else to say. On her way to the royal hunt in the carriage with the emperor, she thought about their talk. Her social standing hadn't changed since he proposed. Now, Karina wasn't even sure his original idea was just about politics. Maybe that recent meeting with Tatia got to Aster after all, and he was just like any other guy. Finally, the guy broke the silence himself, handing the princess a gift box, hoping she'd wear it to the hunting festival. Inside was an unbelievably gorgeous butterfly brooch. Karina was so awkward, she was scared to even look Aster in the eye. But since he gave her a gift, maybe things were okay. The girl still couldn't figure out what the hell he was thinking. With all these mixed feelings, the day of the hunting festival finally arrived. Lily was hyped. They say the Imperial Forest is unbelievably beautiful, but Karina had been there once before, a long, long time ago. It was practically impossible to get in there, except for the hunting festival. But thanks to the princess, the maid could finally see the forest with her own eyes. So, even though Karina didn't want to become like Tatia, she still put on the bracelet to see the main character's future. The girl decided she'd find out how interested Aster was and take it off right away. Lily asked if something was bothering her mistress. She'd been acting strange ever since her date with His Majesty. Karina pretended everything was fine. Their boutique was opening soon, the weather was great, and it was almost the hunting festival. Things couldn't be better. She told the girl not to worry about her. Even if the princess didn't know why Aster rejected her that day, she had other important things to take care of. Finally, the girls arrived at the meeting point, at the entrance to the Imperial Forest. His Imperial Majesty's about to kick off the opening ceremony, and everyone's gotta be there. With a roar from the crowd, the Emperor stepped out to announce the start of the hunt. Karina was caught off guard, seeing the decoration he was wearing. Aster was sporting the exact same brooch he'd given her. The second their eyes met, the girl understood what that brooch meant. Lily had said it was a sign, a symbol of their love and their growing relationship. Basically, an announcement. He was showing everyone they were together. The Emperor was genuinely stoked for the chance to be here with everyone in this legendary place. This land, called the Golden Forest, is, according to legend, the birthplace of their world's creator god. This forest is a one-of-a-kind zone where magic is useless because the pure magic stones here suck all the power right out of you. So everyone can show their true skills. That's what the Imperial Hunt is all about. After tonight's opening festival, the competition kicks off. Day 1 for the guys, Day 2 for the ladies, and a feast on Day 3. The Emperor's hoping everything goes smoothly and wishes everyone the best of luck. While Lily was taking the luggage to their tent, Karina decided to go scout out the medic tent. She had one important thing to take care of at this festival: meet with Allison, Tatia's doctor, and get her on their side. The flag nearby had the Archduke's crest on it. Of course, a family that important wouldn't miss the Imperial Hunt. After Andrew and Tatia's wedding, they supplied their estate staff for every official Empire event, like they were trying to hold back the Emperor's growing power. So it was easy to guess they'd bring medical staff to the hunting festival too. Looking for the infirmary, Karina faked feeling sick to get help from the female doctor. But the only medic here was the Duchess's personal physician, Lady Allison. So the assistant offered her a painkiller, even though she was hoping for a consultation with the doctor. Getting to talk to her right now was impossible, unless it was an emergency, but a male doctor could examine her. Just like Karina thought, meeting Allison was gonna be tough. At the very least, she knows the woman is definitely here. Now, to meet her without looking like a total creep, she figures she'll have to fake an injury in front of everyone during the games. Raymond showed up at the festival soon after, looking a little beat. Thanks to Karina, he hadn't had a single free second because of her demand to finish product development before the Imperial Hunt. Judging by how energetically he was waving his hands around, there was no need to worry about his health. Either way, she checked all the developed products yesterday, and now all he had to do was keep his last promise: to present Karina with some game during the Imperial Hunt. Of course, Raymond remembered. As soon as the hunt was over, this ridiculous contract would be over too. Even though Karina wasn't sure he had the skills to catch anything with his mediocre abilities, the guy would have to try, seeing as how he was so eager for the agreement to end. At that point, Raymond just snapped and yelled that he really hated her. In the medical tent, Allison asked Tatia if she was sure she wanted to participate, considering she'd been complaining about headaches lately. The Archduke had been looking forward to this event for a long time, so she didn't want to make him worry just because of a headache. Allison told the Duchess to let her know immediately if she felt ill. She'd be ready at a moment's notice. No sooner had TT stepped out of the tent than Wilhelm was there, asking how she was feeling. He'd rushed over the second he finished his business, scared when he heard she'd missed the opening ceremony and was in here. She wasn't thrilled to see him, and really hoped he'd come with Andrew. The Archduke said he still had stuff to do, so he'd join them later. He thought Wilhelm was so hyped for the Imperial Hunt. He was like a kid whose parents promised him a picnic. Like he wanted to ditch being master of the Knight's Order to become a toy soldier commander. Now he noticed something was up with TT. Nearby, she spotted Raymond standing next to Karina, who clearly wasn't expecting to see his girl at the event. She grabbed his arm, saying they needed to talk. The two went into the Archduke's tent, and Will, annoyed by this new guy getting Tati's attention, tried to figure out what they were doing inside. She wasn't sure if she could even use the ring Raymond gave her, since they said magic didn't work in the Golden Forest. Yeah, the Golden Forest sucks magic right out of you, but it can't block the power of artifacts made from magic stones. So if you use the ring to off Karina, it'd be the perfect crime. Hearing that from Tatia, Raymond asked her to give him the ring back. He told her he'd handle it himself, because it was too dangerous for a girl to be doing something like that alone. Titi couldn't believe it. Did Ray really think she was that stupid? He promised to help, then disappeared. Didn't fill her in on his plans, and now he wants the ring back that he gave her. Raymond snapped, saying he was doing everything for her, and he only hooked up with Karina in the first place to get close to her. Seeing how easily his favorability changed, Tatia figured his feelings were the problem. They just faded so quickly when they were apart. Clutching her bracelet, she started crying, saying that it would probably end up abandoning her too. Raymond swore he was always honest with her, and that he'd do anything for her happiness, and his favorability level immediately started rising. So Tatia asked him for help, because the only way she could be happy was if Karina disappeared. The guy took her hands. Ever since he first saw Titai cry, she'd been the only one who felt right in his heart, but he couldn't let that happen, so begging for her forgiveness, he snatched the ring away. The guys were gathering at the starting point for the hunt, at the Golden Forest's entrance. Karina couldn't find Aster among them, even though she looked hard, because she wanted to talk. Yesterday, she was suddenly swarmed by people, and she didn't even get a chance to chat with him properly. Before, people always avoided her at events, so maybe the original story's power is fading. Finally, their eyes met, and Aster asked why the princess was here so early. She didn't get to properly greet him yesterday, so she decided to meet him for a quick minute before the guys' competition started. Of course, it was nothing compared to the brooch he gave her, but she grew a flower with magic and gave it to Aster, placing a preservation spell on it so it wouldn't wilt. She worried the gift wasn't good enough, since she doesn't have much magic power or skill, but it was enough. The Emperor was stoked. Karina nailed it. That flower was perfect. Blushing, she noticed the guy was wearing their matching brooch again today. Aster forgot to mention, when they both wear the brooches, he instantly knows if something happens to her, so if she's ever in danger, he'll be there. Because of that, Karina could just chill and enjoy the festival without worrying. Last night, Raymond ripped the ring off Tatia and chucked it as far as he could. The chick, not wanting to give up what was hers, immediately chased after the bling and almost caught it. That's when she wound up at the feet of her husband, Andrew Lovern Gloucester. He didn't know what to make of his wife chasing after a ring given by another dude, like a dog. Tatia made excuses, saying she was just greedy. Raymond gave her the ring, then took it back, so she got pissed. Then, Andrew said he'd buy her hundreds of others with bigger diamonds, instead of that trinket, and stomped on it, smashing it to bits. The girl screamed at him to stop, shielding the thing with her hands. This wasn't new for the Archduke, so he couldn't even get angry. Just surprised how much his wife treasured a ring from another guy. She really could have hurt feelings he didn't even have for her. If she planned on acting this trashy going forward, they'd be better off divorced. Unable to withstand the pressure, Tatia confessed it was an artifact. Seriously, that it wasn't just any ring, but an extremely precious item with a magic stone. It let you use mind-altering magic, even in the Golden Forest. Tatia finally had to admit she planned to use the ring to get rid of Karina. Then, after learning about the jewelry's magic properties, Andrew confiscated it from his wife. Before the hunt, he put it on without a second thought. Maybe his wish was about to come true sooner than he thought. The royal hunt's on, and the guys are charging ahead, ready to prove themselves. Andrew bagged the kill first. His Majesty was just a hair too slow. A split second later, a bullet whizzed right past the Archduke's ear. He hesitated this time, and the Emperor snagged the prey. It was getting dark now. After blasting a good number of different critters, they headed back together. The guys stopped at the cliff, and Astor noticed that he was feeling something weird today. He couldn't tell if it was something new or something familiar. But the second they met eyes, Andrew's face twisted in what looked like fear. But today, he was looking at the Emperor the same way the late Second Prince did, hungry for his spot. Astor pointed his rifle at the Archduke's head, but the guy didn't even flinch. Activating the ring, Andrew declared that this place never belonged to his brother anyway. If our dad hadn't been killed back then, he never would have gotten the throne. The Emperor wasn't sure if he even understood the weight of his words, and the Duke quickly corrected himself. If Astor hadn't killed Dad, he'd be the one on the throne, and my brother would be groveling before me. The guy immediately dropped to his knees, his rifle clattering to the ground. He couldn't control his body. It was like it was made of stone, or wasn't even his. Everything was swirling, and the Emperor realized Andrew was using a mind-altering artifact. The Duke, though, was stoked that he was finally showing his true colors, the face of a murderer. His mom's death wasn't enough. The second he was born, he stole the lives of our dad and brothers too. Bloody Emperor was too fancy a title. Andrew just saw him as a killer, stained with blood since birth. So the imperial throne and Karina were rightfully his from the start. Using his position, the guy shoved his brother off the cliff, trying to take back everything he thought belonged to him. He crushed the flower Karina gave him, then said goodbye to Astor, sending him straight to hell.